Chapter 2251. Han Fei sighed for himself. Although his soul power had exceeded 5 million, his strength had also skyrocketed, and his comprehensive combat power had soared. He was still not strong enough. However, not strong enough is still not strong enough. Although this Crab King City's young master has already turned into a celestial being, when he made his move just now, this guy's first thought was to run. He brought a large group of people with him, and his first thought was to run. Realizing that he couldn't catch up, he directly called him third uncle. Good heavens, if this isn't a King idiot, then what is? In this day and age, being able to turn into a star didn't mean you were strong. It might be because of the accumulation of pure resources, or maybe he was just timid. But in any case, this young master of the Crab King City was already a rookie in Han Fei's eyes. As a result, he killed 7 or 8 small fries, but he didn't even kill the protagonist. How embarrassing was this? However, Han Fei's eyes spread tens of thousands of miles in the void. In the eyes of Zhou Jingjing's people, he seemed to be bragging. At this moment, Zhou Jingjing had already taken back the Sea Expansion Realm powerhouses that he had released. This was no longer a battle that a Sea Expansion Realm powerhouse could participate in. He didn't have a chance to take back his people just now because he was surrounded and didn't dare to act rashly. Who would have thought that this Zhang Dakian was so fierce that he didn't dare to attack the people of the Crab King City? In the blink of an eye, he killed 7 or 8 Sky Expansion Realm powerhouses. The young master of the Crab King City, a Celestial Transformation Realm powerhouse, was directly blown up. Although he didn't die, he was still a Celestial Transformation Realm powerhouse. He was not a cabbage that could be killed easily. Anyway, only now did Zhou Jingjing realize that this guy was just messing around with them. A dignified Celestial Transformation late-stage powerhouse, a powerhouse who could break through the speed of light, snatched a small giant whale fortress. What's the point? And he robbed it 17 times in a row. However, in any case, Zhou Jingjing felt that Han Fei had saved them. Otherwise, if they were taken away by the Crab King City, they would be in danger. However, she didn't know that Han Fei was actually trying to return the favor. Han Fei's understanding was that he went to the giant whale fortress to hone himself, but he attracted the people of the Crab King City. If the Crab King City's people had been easy to talk to, then that would have been fine. However, they had immediately demanded that he submit and kill the king of the giant whale fort. That was a bit too much. The Sea Monster Fortress had more than just a few powerhouses. The destruction of a Sea Monster Fortress was likely to result in the death of many ordinary people. Of course, most of them were humanoids, demonic plants, sea beasts, and other messy races, but they were still living creatures, shouldn't they? At this moment, Han Fei's phantom appeared, dazzling Zhou Jingjing and the others. They felt a sense of helplessness in their hearts, thinking that they couldn't beat him at all. On the other side, Crab King City's third uncle had appeared. He was only slightly slower than Han Fei, perhaps because Han Fei's strength wasn't low. Even if the Crab King City young master had a protective jade slip and crushed it immediately, he still couldn't catch up. If he was just an ordinary sea opening realm expert, then he might have already died. In the void, a middle-aged, burly man wearing crab armor with one hand like a giant pincer appeared. How dare you? How dare you touch my nephew? I'll kill you no matter where you run. Although he was yelling at Han Fei angrily, the middle-aged man still tore open the void with a clamp and broke the sealed void. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed. The surrounding void moved, and the Crab King City young master quickly reassembled. At this time, Zhou Jingjing shouted, "Zhang, you run. The Crab King City can't be too far away. Hurry up and run." Han Fei glanced at Zhou Jingjing, thinking that this man was not bad. He even knew to tell him to run. However, this time, Han Fei wasn't particularly worried. Although this Crab King City was a mobile castle, they didn't have a venerable emperor. Otherwise, if every mobile castle had a venerable emperor, how many venerable emperors would there be? Han Fei had been wandering in the wilderness for 5 years. He had been to hundreds of secret realms, mines, spiritual veins, spiritual springs, spiritual fruits, demonic plants, and so on. He didn't know how many resources he had stuffed into his origin sea. Until now, Han Fei had always felt that according to the law of conservation of energy, no matter how many things he stuffed into his origin sea, no matter whether these things could open the sea or not, they would still remain the same. However, once he returned to his original state, everything in the origin sea would be reset, but the overall energy would remain the same. He firmly believed this. Therefore, for others, this wilderness was an experience, but for Han Fei, it was a treasure trove with countless resources waiting for him to collect. Unfortunately, it was a bit slow to collect them alone. Occasionally, Han Fei would kill demons to defend justice, and occasionally he would just rob others. Of course, Han Fei spent most of his time finding people to hone himself. Han Fei had already found 7 or 8 sea monster fortresses, like Zhoujingjing's. In each group of sea monster fortresses, he fought with them for a while and then gave up. Of course, in the giant whale fortress, Han Fei was just going to hone himself for another 5 or 6 times before he left, but who knew that he would attract the Crab King city? Han Fei turned his head and glanced at them, saying, "Stay away from me." After saving his nephew, the third uncle of the Crab King city charged at Han Fei without hesitation. This man was not a heaven-opening state cultivator like Zhou Jingjing. He was obviously a supermaster in the late stage of the star transformation realm. At this moment, Han Fei ran the Great Tao, burst out a terrifying force, and rushed at this man at a speed faster than light. Bam! 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 Zhou Jingjing and the others ran, while looking at the scene behind them. They thought that this man was a hidden late-stage star transformation supermaster, a big shot who could challenge the Crab King city. However, at the moment when the two of them fought, Zhou Jingjing was speechless to find that Han Fei was actually beaten flying. Or rather, it was simply being beaten up. If Han Fei hit someone once, the other party might have hit him 10 times. Ripples appeared in the void, waves exploded again and again, and the seabed collapsed again and again, all caused by Han Fei. The middle-aged man shouted, "You haven't turned into a star yet? How did you comprehend faster than light?" Huh? Zhou Jingjing and the others ran all the way, and when they heard the conversation behind, they were all dumbfounded. Next to Zhou Jingjing, a person was shocked. "Haven't turned into a star yet? How is that possible? You haven't turned into a star yet, but you killed a star transformation realm powerhouse with a flip of your hand. *T, you haven't turned into a star yet, but you're still fine after being beaten for so long? Ha ha ha." Although Han Fei was beaten violently, he sneered. "Hey, if you can't kill me today, my boundless world will fight with your Crab King city." Ha! Bam! Han Fei was knocked back more than 50,000 kilometers, his internal organs tumbling, and he coughed incessantly. However, the third uncle's face became more and more solemn. Because his power was about to run out, he didn't dare to attack with all his strength. He wanted to give his nephew time to run away and buy time for his main body, so he just beat this man violently. However, he didn't expect Han Fei's physique to be so strong. Ordinary Pioneer Sea Realm experts would be seriously injured, if not killed, after being bombarded by him. But this guy could resist soul attacks, and his body was even more terrifying. He felt that his body could compete with his main body. How lucky was this monster to be born? Zhang Daqian, I'll remember this. The next time I see you, it will be the day you die. Boom! This man's blow was like a star explosion, and turbid waves for 100,000 kilometers rose into the sky. Han Fei was hit by the man's last blow, which was like a falling star. He felt that all his bones were broken, but there was a crazy smile on his face. He roared, "Crab King City, wait for me." Cough, cough. The strong man disappeared, and Han Fei stabilized his body, gasping and murmured so strong, "This is a King Whetstone. This is the best way to beat me." This battle lasted only a few seconds, and I've fought 10 battles with Zhou Jingjing and the others. TSK. When a heavenly awakening divine technique descended, Han Fei's injuries quickly recovered. Zhou Jingjing and the others had already run tens of millions of kilometers away from the battle range of Han Fei and the Crab King City experts. At this time, They didn't dare to neglect it all. If the people of Crab King City really arrived, they would be finished. One day later. Phew, Zhou Jingjing let out a long sigh of relief. After running at full speed for a day, no one should be able to catch up, right? Huh. Zhang Daqian is a lunatic. I can't mess with him. She felt that the battle between such strong masters might last for a while, and they wouldn't pay attention to her small giant whale fortress in a short time. But after this battle, the Crab King City will definitely search for my giant whale fortress. It seems that I have to change to a wild sea area. Zhou Jingjing stabilized her breath and began to sit cross-legged, ready to recover. Just as she sat down, before she even had time to circulate her cultivation method, she heard a voice behind her. Hey, you're leaving just like that? You don't even want to say goodbye? At that moment, Zhou Jingjing broke down. Can you King stop messing around? You're haunting me. Zhou Jingjing didn't know what to do and was about to collapse. She said in annoyance, Brother, fellow cultivator, when did my giant whale fortress offend you? You are a super strong master. Why do you have to make life difficult for my small giant whale fortress? Zhou Jingjing hurriedly got up and stayed away from Han Fei, looking vigilant. However, Han Fei nodded thoughtfully and said, Are you interested in hanging out with me? Chapter 2252. Follow you. Zhou Jingjing was stunned. Although she didn't know why Han Fei had been chasing them, a small giant whale fortress, she had some guesses in her heart. Most likely, Han Fei wanted them to fight with him. In the cultivation method of heaven-opening realm powerhouses, in addition to normal cultivation, they could also learn from each other, sharpen their skills, and go through hardships to stabilize their cultivation faster and even improve their perception. She felt that this was probably Han Fei's idea. The only thing she didn't understand was why Han Fei wanted them to fight when he could easily kill a star transformation realm powerhouse. Han Fei smiled and said, What do you think of the giant whale fortress? Han Fei didn't really want to find a few followers for himself, mainly because he couldn't really attack the Crab King City again and again, even if there was no emperor in the Crab King City. However, the Crab King City's third uncle was already very powerful. He was a powerhouse of the 10 great overlords, and he was one of the stronger ones. Moreover, there was definitely more than one powerhouse in the Crab King City. How could there only be one late-stage star transformation realm powerhouse who could build a mobile fortress? If this was the case, as long as someone could stall the late-stage star transformation realm powerhouse, this mobile fortress would be finished. However, from the way the young master of the Crab King City called him third uncle, Han Fei guessed that there were at least 3 late-stage star transformation realm super powerhouses in the Crab King City, which made more sense. If it were before, Han Fei would definitely not be willing to join forces with this group of people. If he was not careful, he would get himself killed. But now, he should be able to deal with one person. If there were really other powerhouses, Xue Sha should be able to deal with one of them. Of course, if the other party had a third heaven-opening realm powerhouse, Han Fei still wouldn't be able to defeat them. But this also served the purpose of sharpening himself. Otherwise, if he could deal with a mobile fortress by himself, how could he sharpen himself? One of the reasons why Han Fei proposed to let Zhou Jingjing and the others follow him temporarily was to attract the attention of others. The mobile fortress and the sea monster fortress were both located by stargazing. Although in the Starry Sea, the stars were far away and they couldn't cross the Starry Sea. However, as long as they determined that the other party was a cultivator according to the position of the stars, they would chase in that direction, and the probability of meeting them was very high. However, what could be observed were usually the twinkling stars. If it was a lone star, it would be very difficult to observe. For example, in a certain part of the starry sky, there was originally only one star, but then many stars suddenly appeared. This would most likely confirm that there were cultivators there. However, in the starry sky, there were countless lone stars hanging high. Who knew which star corresponded to a cultivator? In the vast sea of stars, even if the cultivators representing the stars could move, because of the great distance, it was difficult to detect under normal circumstances. Therefore, the mobile castles and the sea monster fortresses were only good at discovering group targets. The occasional lone target was mostly due to luck. Zhou Jingjing looked at Han, face solemnly. Why? Your strength is already strong enough to fight against celestial transformation late-stage powerhouses. Why do you still need us to follow you? Aren't you a Lone Ranger? Han Fei grinned and said, You should have guessed what I'm doing, right? Zhou Jingjing, you're honing yourself. You've chosen to use battle to hone yourself, and you need high-intensity battles. The stronger the enemy, the better. Of course, you can't be too strong. Han Fei said with a smile. Smart. So I need bait. Not only to attract the attention of the Crab King City, but also the attention of the sea monster fortresses of other strong people. Zhou Jingjing's teeth ached. Who said the word bait so boldly and blatantly? Besides, he was bait. If he was not careful, he would be doomed eternally. This Zhang Daqian was too ruthless. He even wanted to save him before. Sure enough, Han Fei added, Don't worry. Since you are bait, I can naturally pay you a certain amount of remuneration. According to the resources we loot, the remuneration will be split 30 to 70. I'll take 70% and you take 30%. The strong had the right to decide the price. Han Fei didn't hesitate to tell Zhou Jingjing that this share was only for ordinary looted materials. In the face of looting materials on the level of the Crab King City, he thought it would be good enough to give Zhou Jingjing at most 5% of the resources. After all, they were just bait. Zhou Jingjing had no choice but to agree, although she knew that if she agreed to Han Fei, she would be asking a tiger for its skin, which was very dangerous. Zhou Jingjing asked, Then can you return the previous resources to us? Han Fei frowned. Why should I return the resources that I looted with my own ability? Zhou Jingjing. Another 3 years passed. At this moment, Han Fei, Zhou Jingjing, and the 4 heaven-opening state powerhouses were watching a giant shark escape. Yes, they had looted other sea monster fortresses once. Zhou Jingjing said, It's been 3 years. We have looted at least 70% or 80% of the sea monster fortresses in this sea area. The Crab King City has been lured more than a dozen times. Zhang Daqian, if you want to sharpen yourself, do you want to change places? In the past 3 years, Zhou Jingjing felt like she was treading on thin ice and was very careful every day. Although the resources they had harvested in the past 3 years were as good as the harvest of the previous 100 years, the Crab King City was now famous in this sea area. However, the name of the Great Thousand Realms had already resounded throughout this region of the sea. Every camp, island, ship, and fortress in the wilderness knew about the Great Thousand Realms. Yes, after following Han Fei, the name of the giant whale fortress was no longer used. The main reason was that Zhou Jingjing didn't want to ruin her reputation. Otherwise, when people found out that she was from the giant whale fortress, they would swarm up to kill her. But Han Fei didn't care. He even had the terrifying idea of turning the colossal world into a legend in the wilderness. At that time, when others heard that it was the colossal world, their first reaction would either be to run or to gang up on him. Next to him, another emperor said, Yes, Boss Zhang, you've just heard that just next to our sea area, the seabed collapsed, revealing a huge ancient mountain range where countless strong masters gathered. You can definitely sharpen your cultivation there. Han Fei nodded slightly. That makes sense. Then let's go to the ancient mountain range and have a look. Zhou Jingjing hesitated. Well, we don't have to go there. Okay, let's go. Seeing Han Fei's look, Zhou Jingjing gave up. She simply felt that with Han Fei's personality, if he went to the ancient mountain range, he would definitely have conflicts with a lot of people, and then they would be in even more danger. Han Fei nodded slightly. We'll set off tomorrow, but for now, let's wait a little longer. Hearing that Han Fei wanted to wait a little longer, the faces of the heaven-opening state powerhouses around Zhou Jingjing all changed slightly. They all knew what Han Fei was waiting for. He was waiting. Crab King City. When the void fluctuated slightly, Zhou Jingjing suddenly shouted, Everyone go into the camp. 3 years ago, Han Fei said that Zhou Jingjing and the others were just bait. In the past few years, Zhou Jingjing and the others have played an excellent role as bait. Under normal circumstances, They wouldn't feel afraid, because the sea monster fortresses could only accompany Han Fei to practice. No one could defeat them. However, some people were exceptions, and that was the Crab King City. Now, in this vast sea area, everyone knew that the Crab King City had a conflict with a sea monster fortress called the Colossal World. The Crab King City had tried to strangle the Colossal World more than a dozen times, but failed to annihilate it. At this moment, the void shook. When Han Fei saw the figure that emerged from the void, he couldn't help but grin. Yo, Xie Quan, Third Master Xie, are you alone today? Third Master Xie's face twitched a few times. I knew it was you, Zhang Daqian. Don't run this time. I'll kill you. Han Fei sneered. Come on, I've gained something today. I won't run until we fight for 30,000 rounds. Third Master Xie scoffed. That's what you said. BM, 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 BM. In terms of strength, Han Fei was naturally not as good as Third Master Xie, but he could take a beating. During the past 3 years, he had fought with Third Master Xie 7 or 8 times. In addition to Third Master Xie, Han Fei also fought with Second Master Xie 5 or 6 times. In terms of strength, Second Master Xie was at least 20% stronger than Third Master Xie. In the hands of Second Master Xie, Han Fei had to run away at most after 100 minutes. However, in the hands of Third Master Xie, Han Fei could barely hold on for more than half an hour. But this time, half an hour later, Third Master Xie was a little shocked. Have you turned into a star? Han Fei sneered. If I were a star, would you be able to beat me? In fact, in the 8th year of experience in the wilderness, Han Fei had finally consolidated a small part of his foundation. Half a month ago, he had an epiphany and his strength soared by 20%, or because he had consolidated his foundation and recovered his normal combat power, his strength had increased by 20%. This 20% was not a joke. This was the strength of his main body. Without using the Great Path, even though it was only a mere 20%, it was a breakthrough success. Because Han Fei found that as his soul and body became more and more balanced, the effect of strength consolidation became more and more obvious. After the true extreme balance, Han Fei thought that his basic strength might directly soar by more than 50%. An hour later, Han Fei's chi and blood surged. Although he couldn't fight anymore, it was really cool. This Third Master Xie was really reckless. He could beat him up every time. This time, Han Fei felt that it was equivalent to 10 years of cultivation. Suddenly, Han Fei subconsciously pinched his fingers and looked at the sky. His face suddenly changed. It had been exactly 1 day since the last 9 palace ruler of Providence. Oh, it's the 2nd day. Chapter 2253. Today, Han Fei fought 2 consecutive battles. Although the battle with Master Xie benefited a lot, it took him too long and he accidentally exceeded the time limit. Han Fei had a bad feeling about this and immediately shouted, "Zhou Jingjing, run!" Others could be kept in the giant whale's sea of origin, but Zhou Jingjing couldn't because Zhou Jingjing was stronger than the giant whale. Just like Zhang Daqian's clone, although it was nicknamed the Boundless World, it never accepted people. At first, in order to attract attention, Zhou Jingjing didn't run away, but only stayed far away after Master Xie came. But in fact, it wasn't too far away. One was that Master Xie was pinned down by Han Fei and had no time to care about her. The other was that although Zhou Jingjing had also been acting as bait in the past few years, she had learned too much from Han Fei's battles. She found that Han Fei's great techniques seemed to be inexhaustible. Besides, the Tao that Han Fei had mastered was very complicated, and his fighting style was also unusual. Therefore, although she didn't know how much Han Fei had grown in the past few years, she felt that she was growing rapidly, obtaining more resources, understanding more combat techniques, and using the Tao more skillfully. Her strength had increased by at least 30%. In such a situation, Zhou Jingjing certainly didn't want to miss it, so she had to watch the battle from the sidelines. Because the Crab King City didn't dare to send ordinary heaven-opening state experts to kill Han Fei, no one would disturb her. However, this time, an accident happened. A crack suddenly appeared in the void, and Xie Xian, the second big shot of the Crab King City that Han Fei was also familiar with, rushed out of the void. Xie Xian shouted, "Zhang Daiqian, we failed to catch you every time we joined hands. Do you really think the Crab King City didn't find anything?" Zhou Jingjing was shocked. What happened? Why was he caught this time? Didn't Zhang Daiqian have a way to avoid the pursuit of the Crab King City? Han Fei activated the Tao of space, and under the distortion of the void, he burst out at 3 times the speed of light. When he burst out at the speed of light, Han Fei's figure shook, and a black mist invisible to the naked eye dispersed. Xie Xian bellowed, "It's only 3 times the speed of light. Do you think you can escape?" At that moment, Xie Xian suddenly disappeared and forcibly broke into Han Fei's twisted void. He also burst out at the speed of light, but it was even faster than 3 times the speed of light, maybe 4 times or even 5 times the speed of light. Xie San shouted, "Zhang Daiqian, let's see how you can escape today." Buzz, after saying that, Xie San also joined in the superluminal explosion. However, his superluminal speed was only 4 times. But even so, he was faster than Han Fei. The main reason was that he didn't grasp as many great Daos as Han Fei. Therefore, even though he had been a star for a long time, his understanding of the speed of light was only slightly better than Han Fei's. Over the years, Han Fei didn't have a deep understanding of the speed of light. However, he could be considered to have understood that the heaven-opening realm's superluminal eruption was at most 10 times the speed of light. 10 times the speed of light was like a dividing line. It was difficult for ordinary heaven-opening realm cultivators to break through. This was also part of the prediction that Senior Brother Azure Dragon gave him during the small meeting in the Void Temple, but he didn't make it very clear, probably because he wanted Han Fei to explore it. In this case, Han Fei definitely couldn't escape by running normally. With Han Fei's current strength, he couldn't even beat Xie San. If there was another Xie San, he would definitely be defeated. If the two of them fought together, Han Fei wouldn't even be able to last for 100 minutes. Han Fei had only run tens of millions of kilometers when he was stopped by these two people. However, after fighting for less than 2 minutes, Xie San's face suddenly changed. No, the strength is not right. Zhang Daiqian's strength is at least 30% weaker, and his physique is not as strong as before. Xie San immediately shouted, "Brother, take down Zhou Jingjing." Zhou Jingjing, who had run tens of millions of kilometers away, had no idea what was going on behind her. At this time, all she could do was run. If she was 1 step slower, the consequences would be unimaginable. She had thought that she would be able to escape this time around. However, the void space in front of her suddenly trembled, and a human figure grabbed out toward her at superluminal speed. Zhou Jingjing hadn't even comprehended the speed of light yet. How could she fight back in the face of this grab? She knew in her heart that she was doomed this time. Xie Wuyin, the boss of the Crab King City, was here, and she couldn't escape. At that moment, when Zhou Jingjing thought she was going to die this time, a voice sounded in her ears. "Open your mind." Huh? This voice, like a life-saving straw, ignited the hope of survival in Zhou Jingjing's heart. Gemini is one. In a flash, Zhou Jingjing only felt her eyes go black, and then she appeared in an unknown world. She immediately realized that this should be Zhang Daiqian's Origin Sea. Unfortunately, this Origin Sea was not open to her, so she couldn't feel this Origin Sea. Outside, at the moment when Han Fei put Zhou Jingjing away, Xie Wuyin, the boss of the Crab King City, had already reached her. At this time, Xie Wuyin was also shocked. This guy's speed had completely exceeded the scope of the speed of light. This should be a kind of great technique that could separate 2 places. In the Crab King City's understanding of Han Fei, he had never used this kind of great technique. Otherwise, how could the Crab King City not have a countermeasure? Han Fei only felt a terrifying force drilling into his body, which was disintegrating the operation of the power in his body, and even wanted to interfere with the burst of the great Tao in his body. Fortunately, Han Fei's physique was strong, and he locked that force in an instant, sealing it in his body. Cough! Han Fei twisted the void, but he was still blasted away by Xie Wuyin's palm. A mouthful of essence blood was in his mouth, but he swallowed it forcibly. Xie Wuyin sneered. Zhang Daiqian, today the three of us are here. You can't escape. At this time, Han Fei didn't pay attention to this guy at all. He was wondering whether to use Blood Demon or the Great Tao of Time. If he used Blood Demon, there were 3 people on the opposite side, and he still couldn't escape. So, Han Fei made up his mind and directly accelerated the time around him. Swish, 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 Xie Wuyin only saw that Han Fei's speed suddenly skyrocketed, and in the blink of an eye, it exceeded 4 times the speed of light, and even seemed to reach 5 times the speed of light. At that time, Xie Wuyin was stunned. Did this kid really not turn into a star? In his life, he had never seen a strong man who hadn't turned into a star who could burst out such a fast speed. This was not the swordsman or boxing master of the Eastern Sword Pavilion or the Fistlight Mountain. Even if he could reach such a speed in an instant, how could he run so fast? Xie Wuyin was speechless. This guy was hit by my palm, but he was not hurt at all, and he could still continue to burst out while resisting my great Tao of corrosion. When Xie Wuyin chased after him, he broke a light blue barrier and suddenly felt that his speed suddenly slowed down. His terrifying speed, which had exceeded 7 times the speed of light, directly fell to only 4 times the speed of light. Great Tao of Time, Xie Wuyin was shocked. Why the F***CK did this Great Tao of Time appear? Fortunately, this Great Tao of Time couldn't stop him for long. Just 2 seconds later, Xie Wuyin suddenly shattered the power of time. However, Han Fei's figure was gone now. In 2 or 3 seconds, under the exaggerated escape speed of 5 times the speed of light, Han Fei had already run thousands of kilometers. It would be difficult to catch up with him. At this time, Xie Laosan and Xie Laosan caught up one after another. Xie Laosan asked, "Boss, where is he?" Xie Wuyin replied, "He ran away. Zhou Jing and Jing you were taken away by him." "Wow." Xie Xian asked, "Boss, didn't you stop that kid?" "Wait, how could that kid cross thousands of kilometers so quickly and come directly from our side to your side?" Xie Wuyin said, "This kid's identity is by no means ordinary. He had a lot of things. In the blink of an eye, he crossed so far without any gap. Even I can't do it. Even those who are stronger than me and are about to reach the Tao-proving realm can't do it. This kid must have secret techniques and life-saving divine skills." And Xie Wuyin said leisurely, "He actually took the Great Tao of Time." Xie Xian. Xie Quan. Xie Quan exclaimed, "Great Tao of Time, this. Do we provoke someone we shouldn't provoke?" Xie Wuyin shook his head slightly. "Not necessarily from the Temple of Time. This person's Great Tao is too heterogeneous. He can master every Great Tao, so he may not necessarily be from the Temple of Time. Have you ever heard of people from the Temple of Time cultivating these messy Great Tao?" Xie Xian and Xie Quan shook their heads. The Great Tao of Time was extremely powerful. If Xie Quan had known that Han Fei took the Great Tao of Time in the first battle, he wouldn't have chased him. After all, it was just a few ordinary heaven-opening realm powerhouses who died. In the wilderness, there were many heaven-opening realm powerhouses. Generally, as long as they hunted a sea monster fortress, they could be replenished. Who would want to offend someone who had mastered the Great Tao of Time for this? Xie Quan asked, "Boss, what should we do now? Even if that kid is not from the Temple of Time, he is extremely sinister and haunts us many times. Will he come back to retaliate against us?" Xie Wuyin thought for a while and said, "Now it seems that he didn't hide so many abilities just to deal with us. I'm afraid this kid is using us as a whetstone." Hiss! Xie Xian was furious. "I'll tear him apart. How dare he use my Crab King city as a whetstone? Is he tired of living?" Xie Wuyin glared at him. "If you don't have the ability to keep us here, why are you shouting here?" My Great Tao of corrosion hit his body and left a mark. With his strength, he shouldn't be able to break it in a short time. I'll catch up with him and not give him a chance to breathe. Whether I can kill him or not, at least I can't let him stay in the sea under our jurisdiction. Chapter 2254. 7 days later. Above a certain sea area, Han Fei cursed, son of a b asterisk h, this old man won't let me go. I just used your Crab King City as a whetstone. I didn't make you bald. Why do you keep chasing me? Han Fei thought that since he had killed in Taiping and Xiao Shotsong, he could fight against a late-stage star condensation powerhouse. But in fact, when he really fought with Xiao Wuyin, he found that this person was not only strong, but also comparable to a powerhouse at the level of Xiao Shotsong. His Tao was also very insidious. When this Tao entered his body, it fled everywhere. He used the heavenly awakening divine technique on his whole body, but this thing could barely resist. Until today, it was almost obliterated by him. At the moment when the corrosion Tao disappeared, Xiao Wuyin, who had been chasing Han Fei all the way, frowned, stopped his pursuit, and murmured, "Disappeared? How could it disappear? Even the Tao is gone. How did that kid do it?" Exciting. Han Fei knew that he had gotten rid of the pursuit. Recalling the direction he escaped, and then according to the time and speed of rushing all the way, he roughly judged his location. Han Fei didn't expect that he had run so far in the past few days. He had almost run out of the Crab King City's sphere of influence. Now, Han Fei's position in the wilderness was already very far from the chaotic wasteland. The only place that was relatively close to this place might be the Ghost Strait. However, the Spectre Strait was about half a light year away from where he was. However, the ancient place that Han Fei had been hearing about in the Crab King City's sphere of influence seemed to be in this area. Han Fei estimated that as long as he walked to the Nexi area, he should be able to find the so-called God's ruins in half a month or a month at most. As for the Crab King City, he couldn't beat them yet. The main reason was that their boss was too powerful. This whetstone might even grind the knife into pieces. What was the point? Therefore, Han Fei simply gave up. Didn't they say that there were many strong masters near the ancient mountain range? Then he would go there and have a look. However, before going to the ancient mountain range, Han Fei released Zhou Jingjing and the others. Zhou Jingjing's first reaction was, "You got rid of the Crab King City's pursuit?" Han Fei sneered. "A mere Crab King City is insignificant. I'm letting you out today to return your freedom." Zhou Jingjing thought to himself, "I've seen you get beaten up countless times. You make it sound like Crab King City is just a piece of trash in your eyes." Zhou Jingjing was stunned. "Give us back our freedom?" In the past few years, although Zhou Jingjing had been on tenterhooks, he had come to realize the benefits of relying on the strong. Although Han Fei used him as bait, every time Han Fei could defeat his opponents, and they could always get some leftovers. This was much better than when they were the fortress of sea monsters. Now, Han Fei was going to give them back their freedom. Was he going to let them go? Han Fei said leisurely, "I'm going to take a look around the ancient mountain range. Although you guys are strong, it's too dangerous there. I may not be able to guarantee your safety. So what's your choice?" "How should I choose?" Zhou Jingjing was a little confused. "Didn't you already decide?" "What do you mean, how should I choose?" Wait, Zhou Jingjing suddenly came to his senses. That didn't seem to be the case. Although the ancient mountain range was dangerous in the wilderness, which place was not dangerous? As members of the sea monster fortress, they were already quite strong in the wilderness. In a place like the ancient mountain range, after it appeared, there would be a large number of strong people exploring it. However, no matter how many strong people explored, the wilderness was vast, and as long as they were careful, no strong people would really notice them. Besides, most of the time, the strong people they encountered were at most about the same level as them. If they were even stronger, why would they bother with them? If they were really that strong, then they wouldn't mind robbing an ordinary heaven-opening expert like him. For people like Han Fei, robbing was not what he wanted. Zhou Jingjing's eyes lit up. "Can we continue to be bait?" Han Fei grinned and said, "Yes, but I won't give you a raise. Besides, in that ancient mountain range, I'm afraid there will be more and more enemies. You have to be mentally prepared not to come out to hunt for a long time." In fact, Han Fei didn't want to disband this bait for the time being. After all, they cooperated so well, and there would be decades of cooperation in the future. It would be more troublesome to find new partners. Zhou Jingjing took a deep breath and said firmly, "We can continue to be bait. He didn't know why, but Zhou Jingjing felt that this was an opportunity. She knew what Han Fei meant. He meant that there were many strong people on the ancient mountain range, so naturally there would be many enemies. The reason why Han Fei proposed that they could leave freely was to give them a choice. Zhou Jingjing thought to herself. In fact, Han Fei hadn't completely understood the law of survival in the wilderness. As long as there was meat to eat, as long as they could rise, many people were willing to pay some price. If she acted as bait for Han Fei, the harvest would be hundreds of times that of hunting alone. Why wouldn't she be bait? Han Fei smiled. Then it's a deal. If one day I can't guarantee your safety, it will be the time you and I go our separate ways. As for whether you can leave safely at that time, it's none of my business. Originally, Han Fei had another plan, which was to find another team to act as bait on the ancient mountain range. In the past few years, he found that Zhou Jingjing was doing well. Most of the resources they harvested were provided to the people in her camp. However, not everyone was like Zhou Jingjing. He wanted to find some vicious people as bait, so it didn't matter if they lost them. But since Zhou Jingjing was willing to be bait, he had nothing to say. After all, the two sides cooperated well. Half a month later, under the guidance of the nautical panorama, Han Fei found the location of the ancient mountain range very accurately. However, the territory occupied by this ancient mountain range was beyond Han Fei's imagination. Han Fei thought that it was just a mountain range. How big could it be? As an ancient relic, it should be as big as the 100,000 mountains at least. But in fact, this was not the case. For example, at this moment, a group of demon conches who were about to attack Han Fei and the others were trembling under Han Fei's pressure. The leading shaking demon conch said nervously, "Sir, now this ancient mountain range has been named the God's Ruins by many explorers. We can't calculate how big the periphery of the ruins is. Occasionally, there will be strange phenomena. It is said that some people have seen divine weapons here, and there are also rumors that some people have picked up a large pit of black-yellow soil here, and some people say that natural treasures and ancient demon cores have been excavated here. As for the real God's Ruins, we have never been there. It is said that anyone below the heaven-opening state will definitely die if they enter." Han Fei asked, "Why are there so few heaven-opening state powerhouses in such a big place? According to what you said, there seems to be a lot of good things in the periphery." The demon conch smiled bitterly. "Sir, that's because there are more opportunities in the places outside the ruins. I heard that half a year ago, someone got some kind of opportunity there and directly reached the Dao realm." Reached the Dao realm? Han Fei was confused. How could it be so easy to reach the Dao realm? "Okay, you can go now." Han Fei thought to himself. "Treasure digging is my strength. With the navigator, I don't necessarily need to go to the inner area immediately." According to the demon conch, the inner area is extremely dangerous, and the opportunities in the outer area seem to be not small. Anyway, it has been a long time since he came out of the God's Ruins, so he didn't have to rush there. Under the guidance of the navigator, Han Fei began to rummage and dig around. 3 days later, Han Fei dug through a mountain, and a strange light burst out. A red crystal soared into the sky and was caught in Han Fei's hand. However, the brilliant light did not disappear. Instead, it turned into a red cloud that began to spread outward. This kind of obvious energy fluctuation radiated outward at the speed of light. Han Fei was dumbfounded. At the same time, people nearby and a little further away glanced in Han Fei's direction. Is there a strange treasure? The phenomenon of heaven and earth is beyond the range of perception. It seems to be a good treasure. Which bastard is so lucky? Why can't I find any treasure? Han Fei stared at the red crystal in his hand, and information appeared in his eyes. Name God's Crystal Introduction. The blood of gods has lost its vitality and finally solidified into a magical crystal. In the God's Crystal, there is a trace of the Great Way of the Gods. The Great Way of the Gods can also absorb a trace of souls to consolidate the souls and flesh. Level Heaven and Earth Spiritual Treasure Quality Regular contains chi and blood. Effect: this God's crystal can replenish chi and blood and help cultivate the body. The effect is extraordinary. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. So it's just a heaven and earth spiritual treasure? Shouldn't the blood of gods be at least a chaos spiritual treasure? Han Fei thought for a while. This god's crystal seemed to be only useful for tempering the body, because it contained qi and blood and nothing else. Han Fei quickly put it into the origin sea. He didn't use it immediately, because he knew that tempering the body was not something that could be done overnight. He was here to search for treasures, not to cultivate in a treasure trove. Maybe because of the special environment here, there were many big and small treasures, so even though Han Fei confirmed with the navigator, he still missed some. He dug out some small items that were not very valuable. Another 2 days passed. Han Fei dug a mountain and saw a piece of green jade. He was just about to grab it. However, immediately, the mountain collapsed and the place caved in. Hundreds of mountains in the surroundings were destroyed along with them. At the same time, more than 100 mountains collapsed, forming a force that turned into ripples and spread in all directions, as if to show the extraordinary power of the thing in Han Fei's hand. When Han Fei took a closer look, his eyes lit up. It was the heavenly jade essence. The Emperor of 10,000 Scales once rewarded him with one. The effect of this thing was equivalent to 100 years of body tempering. Chapter 2255. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. In just 5 days, he had obtained 2 body-refining treasures in a row. If he had known that there were so many treasures in this god's ruin, he would have come long ago. Why would he wait until now? TSK. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich this time. Han Fei's mood at the moment could only be described as surging with excitement. Treasure digging, treasure digging. This was the real treasure digging. Any random move would be a spirit treasure. This was a treasure land bestowed by God. Another 3 days passed. Han Fei dug toward the high mountain. This high mountain was extraordinary. At first glance, he knew it was not an ordinary mountain. Other people probably thought the same when they encountered it. They all thought there was some treasure suppressed under it. So they all came to dig, causing many holes to be dug on it. However, Han Fei was sure that they didn't dig out the real treasure. Otherwise, the celestial navigation instrument wouldn't point here. Therefore, Han Fei also began to dig. This mountain was tens of thousands of meters high, and the rock wall was hard. Other mountains were peak-shaped, but this mountain was columnar. Clang, 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 thud, thud, thud. Perhaps this mountain had been dug many times, so everyone knew that there was nothing good here, so no one came here. Han Fei knocked and knocked, so no one knew. Han Fei dug all the way from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the ground, and then kept digging from the bottom of the ground. After 5 days of digging, he finally saw a bone shrouded by a barrier and emitting a strange brilliance. Huh, a bone? Han Fei frowned. He thought he was looking for a peerless treasure, but this treasure turned out to be a bone. What was the use of a bone? It couldn't be eaten, nor could it be used for anything. Of course, this was just Han Fei's complaint. How could a bone that was so well hidden and difficult to dig out be an ordinary thing? Han Fei immediately reached out to grab the bone, but when he tried to grab it, his giant hand was directly melted by the light emitted by the bone. F***CK. Han Fei cursed, with a look of shock in his eyes. It's just a bone. Could it be the bone of a god? When Han Fei got closer, he found that a force was trying to break through his defense and invade his body. But the strength was still within his bearable range. As he got closer and closer, he finally dug out a rock wall. It was as if a barrier had been dug through. The dazzling golden light instantly broke through the passageway and enveloped him. Hiss! Han Fei gasped. He felt that there was an extremely terrifying power that made his body and soul tremble. Didn't they say that this is only the outer area of the god's ruin? I haven't even been inside yet. How did you manage to dig out such a thing? Han Fei felt that his blood was almost boiling, rushing like the waves of the sea. Xiao Qian's flesh and blood trembled spontaneously. The primal chaos qi he gave off barely resisted the resplendent golden light, preventing it from entering his body. However, this persistence lasted for less than 100 breaths. Han Fei felt that the rock wall below him and the mountain high above him were faintly trembling. Not good. Han Fei was horrified. In order to dig out this bone, he had dug too deep. If the mountain collapsed, he would be buried immediately. Although Han Fei was not afraid of being buried, the rock wall here was solid and seemed to be stained with a magical aura, so it was extremely difficult to break through it directly. It would take him at least 5 or 6 days of digging before he could dig out another passageway. Presumably, there would be another group of people around this mountain. Unfortunately, the more he didn't want something, the more likely it would come. With a rumble, stone chips flew behind Han Fei, completely blocking the way. Han Fei made a backhand gesture and set up a reverse gravity field to block the surging force. He leaned closer to the bone. When Han Fei looked at the bone again, some information popped up. Name: Holy Bones. Introduction: Holy bones are mostly the broken and necrotic bones of gods. When this thing is formed, it no longer belongs to the bones of gods, but it has a trace of divinity. Holy bones may contain the blood, divine thoughts, divine power, divine skills, divine marrow. Ordinary people can't easily try them. Once they can't bear the divinity, they will be enslaved by the gods and become the carrier of the gods' resurrection. Level: divine, quality, regular, content, unknown, effect, unknown hiss. Seeing this information, Han Fei didn't know whether to be happy or speechless. If he was careless, he would be enslaved by the gods. Didn't it mean that this thing was probably left by the gods on purpose? Their purpose was to be found and then resurrected with the help of others. In essence, what was the difference between this and possession? Han Fei was horrified. So, the power that was crazily trying to drill into his body was actually a kind of divinity? Son of AB *TCH. You've been dead for tens of thousands of years, and you still want to kill me? I'm going to refine you. Yin-Yang Millstone. At that moment, the Yin-Yang Millstone was formed in Han Fei's body. All the power absorbed by the Yin-Yang Millstone would eventually become the purest power. If the Yin-Yang Millstone couldn't resist it, he could resist this thing by force. Down below, Han Fei was frantically resisting the erosion of the divinity. In the outside world, the whole mountain seemed to have become a golden mountain, shining brilliantly. How could such a handsome appearance not attract attention? In just 3 to 5 days, many experts discovered the opportunity here and rushed here. Someone exclaimed in surprise, "Isn't this mountain riddled with holes a long time ago? Why is it suddenly glowing now?" Someone was surprised. "What a beautiful place. There must be precious treasures here." Someone was excited. "Finally, a peerless treasure has appeared on the periphery. If I can find it, I may be able to soar to the sky in a single step." Those who came rushed into the Golden Mountain, but the mountain had collapsed in many places and they couldn't find the way. Secondly, when some people dug into the mountain, their eyes flickered as they dug. They could vaguely feel that golden light seemed to appear in their minds, as if they were about to have an epiphany of the firmament great technique. Some people were overjoyed, thinking that this place was a magical treasure land. When the treasure light entered their bodies, it would help them have an epiphany. Some people were shocked that their consciousness was sometimes out of their control. Where did this terrifying power come from? Why did it appear? Was it harmful to them? There were all kinds of situations, but no one who rushed into the mountain was willing to retreat. Even if some people wanted to retreat, they had a kind of resistance in their hearts, as if there was a voice deep in their hearts calling them. "Stay and keep digging. I have a feeling that a great fortune is coming to me." More and more people came to this mountain. And under the mountain, Han Fei's resistance was quite difficult. But at the same time, Han Fei was surprised to find that Little Black and Little White had advanced after only 1 day of the Yin-Yang Millstone. Well, Han Fei sensed that not only Little Black and Little White had advanced. He found that the divine power purified by the Yin-Yang Millstone was slowly fusing into his flesh and bone marrow. In just 1 day, a drop of golden jade essence was produced. This phenomenon shocked Han Fei. He had cultivated hard for 300 years and only produced a total of 8 drops of golden jade essence. But under the illumination of this bone, it only took him 1 day to produce a drop. What did this mean? Han Fei was horrified. If he cultivated here, his physique would soar by leaps and bounds. This surge was brought by the golden jade essence, which was a solid foundation. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. On this day, little black and little white advance again. Another drop of golden jade essence was produced in Han Fei's body. At this moment, Han Fei didn't want to leave. He knew that he had indeed encountered a great opportunity this time. Under the illumination of the divine bone, his cultivation speed was directly increased by 1,000 times, even 10,000 times. In addition to the growth of the golden jade essence, Han Fei felt that his flesh and blood were also slightly strengthened. Han Fei estimated that according to this cultivation nourishment, he could consolidate his foundation without having to forcibly transform his soul and body, which was all good without any harm. But Han Fei didn't know that in the outside world, the flames of war were raging. Someone went crazy and laughed out loud. Mine, it's all mine. I foresee the divine path. I foresee the divine path. While crazily devouring the endless brilliance, the man swallowed the endless brilliance, and his strength was indeed skyrocketing. Bullshit, the divine path is mine. Who do you think you are? And such a situation happened not only to this person. Other people also seemed to have seen the divine path. Seeing that someone wanted to compete with them for the divine path, how could they give up? For a time, a war broke out here, and the strong fought for supremacy. In the next few days, people who went to this mountain saw that the battle here had gone crazy. The mountain was almost flattened, but the golden light didn't dissipate. Seeing those guys who said that they had seen the divine path fighting each other crazily, the latecomers didn't dare to enter. Someone sighed. Crazy? These people have gone crazy from fighting. This golden light is too dangerous. We can't touch it. Someone sighed. These guys keep saying that they saw the divine path. Is there a God-level treasure suppressed below? Many people, although afraid of this golden light, refused to leave, wanting to see the mystery here. On this day, it was the 10th day of Han Fei's operation of the yin-yang millstone. His third drop of golden jade essence had just been produced, and little black and little white had advanced again. This time, Han Fei suddenly heard a voice in his ears. Those who inherit my Tao can communicate with the divine path. Chapter 2256. Who's there? Han Fei was alarmed. The voice that suddenly appeared in his ears alarmed him. It was a desire from the bottom of his heart, which made him eager to obtain power. That feeling was right in front of him. Was a holy bone tempting him? Han Fei frowned and sneered. What's the condition? You only have a bone left, and you still want to tempt me? Emperor Sparrow, it's time to eat. This kind of impure temptation was also a kind of evil power. This kind of power made many people fall into chaos. The Emperor Sparrow was born to devour this kind of power. Therefore, the moment the Emperor Sparrow came out, he knew Han Fei's purpose. Who? As the Emperor Sparrow opened its mouth, a tremendous amount of golden light surged into his body. The Emperor Sparrow's voice sounded in Han Fei's heart. Very pure divine power. I'm afraid it's the remaining power of a god, right? Han Fei said, I don't know. Anyway, it's good for me to cultivate with this power. The Emperor Sparrow said, I'm afraid your cultivation won't last long. This kind of divine power is good, but if you absorb too much of it, it will affect you. Fortunately, you still have the yin-yang millstone. Otherwise, you might have gone crazy or even been parasitized by this godhood. In the distant future, the power of godhood may awaken in your body. Han Fei was alarmed. Then what should I do? Give it up? The Emperor Sparrow said, if you can forge it with the spiritual fire of heaven and earth, you might be able to refine it into a weapon, at least a divine weapon. Otherwise, I advise you to give it up. It's not easy to take something left by God. Han Fei was tempted. Why didn't you say so earlier? I'm good at refining. I happen to have a lot of refining materials that I don't need in the Origin Sea. Han Fei said, got it. Go back and rest. I'll deal with it. The Emperor Sparrow asked, are you sure you can deal with it? Han Fei said, if I can't, I can just leave. After taking the Emperor Sparrow back into the Origin Sea, Han Fei condensed a giant hand again and grabbed at the holy bone. Unfortunately, his terrifying power collapsed when it was about to touch it. Han Fei was not in a hurry. He stretched out his hand, and the demon purification pot appeared in his palm. Han Fei, who could barely use part of the demon purification pot's power, let the demon purification pot stretch out a small vine, clasped the holy bone, and dragged it into the demon purification pot. How could the divine bone be willing? It displayed a powerful will to resist the demon purification gourd. At that moment, strange scenes appeared in the outside world. However, the golden halo finally dissipated, and what replaced it was a void divine shadow that was covered in strange Tao patterns. The heaven-opening experts who had been fighting had originally been in a killing frenzy, but at that moment, they all stopped at the same time and attacked the mountain, as if they wanted to bore through it. Boom, boom. Han Fei frowned when he sensed the slight vibration underground. What happened outside? Looks like it's going to cause quite a commotion. Master Calabash, let's go. In the demon purification gourd, several small vines moved at the same time and began to drag the holy bone. Sure enough, the holy bone couldn't resist the power of the demon purification pot and was dragged into it. Phew! Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't try to pick it up directly. Otherwise, he would have been troubled. As for body refinement, Han Fei had a good idea. There was no such thing as a pie in the sky. It was incredible that a drop of the golden jade essence could be produced in just a few days. At the moment when he heard it, his heart was touched, and he had an inexplicable impulse. The power he absorbed had been tempered by the yin-yang millstone. But no matter what, this time he had gained a lot. 10 days of cultivation here was better than 10 years of body refinement. Since he couldn't grasp the power of the holy bone, he might as well let him refine it. Refine. Han Fei didn't care what was needed to refine this holy bone. As soon as the demon purification pot was opened, he threw a lot of rare treasures from the Origin Sea into it. He didn't know if they could be refined into divine weapons, but he knew they were all good stuff. An hour later, the vibration of the bottom of the sea was getting weaker and weaker. Han Fei didn't know if it was because the holy bone had been completely refined, but he seemed to hear a roar. At this moment, in Han Fei's Origin Sea, half of the materials he had plundered over the years were sucked clean. More than 500,000 strands of chaotic energy were swallowed, and more than 20,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy were swallowed. When a pair of black gloves inlaid with dark golden weird patterns appeared in front of him, information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name, God-slaying gloves, introduction, it's made of the holy bone, the grand green essence, the ancient dragon vein, the star jade, and the crystallization of everything. The gloves have natural Taoist patterns and can burst out 30% of the power. The God-slaying gloves are bloodthirsty, soul-devouring, and have demonic energy. Once the demonic energy enters the body, it can cause chaos and madness. Quality, high-quality divine weapon, soul attachment, none effect, bloodthirsty, soul-devouring, and chaos, recastable, unrefined, remarks, natural Taoist patterns, and can burst out for a long time. Seeing this pair of gloves, Han Fei nodded with satisfaction. Although he majored in knife techniques, his knife techniques were too simple. Once something happened, it was more likely that he would be recognized. And he was also good at fist techniques, so he could pretend to be someone from the mountain of fist radiance. Han Fei couldn't help but grin, stretched out his hand, and took the gloves. A high-quality divine weapon required blood to recognize its owner, which consumed a lot of vitality. But what Han Fei didn't lack now was vitality and lifespan. Besides, his strength was not weak now, and his vitality was rich and majestic. After only 5 apocalyptic divine techniques, Han Fei subdued the God-slaying gloves. It took Han Fei 5 days to dig out the depths of the ground. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. Before he had time to run, the surrounding void fell into a strange big array. A barrier? Han Fei was horrified. He looked down, only to find that there was a huge pit under him. The original pillar-shaped mountain was completely gone, and even the ground had been blasted into an abyss dozens of kilometers deep. For a moment, 7 strong masters with red eyes charged at Han Fei. Was I ambushed? Han Fei didn't panic, but he didn't expect to be ambushed like this. Did what happened below attract the attention of the outside world? The only thing Han Fei could think of was that the divine bone had attracted a lot of people. Swish, someone swept past Han Fei, and the void here was slashed apart. A void storm surged like a wave, covering the place where Han Fei was. Although Han Fei also wanted to sharpen himself through fighting, there would obviously be more people here. This void had been blocked by an inexplicable barrier. If he didn't kill those enemies, how could he feel at ease? So when the first heaven-opening state powerhouse passed by him, Han Fei also swept to the side, grabbed a void-long knife, and swept past this person. Both of them were extremely fast, and there was a feeling of meeting on a narrow road. Bam! Half of that person's body exploded. Han Fei wanted to conserve his strength, so he didn't use his full strength. Even so, Han Fei felt that the person he had killed couldn't recover in less than 5 minutes. In the other 6 heaven-opening state powerhouses, someone shouted, "The divine path is mine. No one can take it away." Someone madly burned his blood essence, using his own blood essence as a seal, trying to seal Han Fei. F***CK. Are they risking their lives? Han Fei realized that something was wrong. These people seemed to have gone crazy. Half of the body of the person behind him exploded, but the first thing he did was not to repair his body, but to turn back and madly attack him. Are they really crazy? Han Fei frowned. These people seemed to have lost their minds and were fighting desperately. If these people are crazy, who set up the barrier? Han Fei shattered the blood seal on his body with a backhand and punched a heaven-opening state powerhouse. His soul was like a thorn, piercing through this person's soul. BM, BM, BM on Han Fei's fists. There were waves of bloodlight, his tyrannical physique, and the domineering Emperor Slayer's fist mark, which seemed to be telling the story of his origin. And behind the scenes, on the head of a giant tortoise, stood several young powerhouses. A young man exclaimed, "Are these people from the Fist Light Mountain? Why are the people from the Fist Light Mountain here?" Someone frowned and said, "They probably came to the wilderness to gain experience and happened to get the news of the mythical ruins. This person's physique is so strong that he can withstand the attacks of these lunatics. His combat power is so domineering that he can kill them with one blow. It seems that he is undoubtedly at the late stage of the star formation realm." Someone frowned and said, "Since he is from the Fist Light Mountain, should we fight him? What this person showed must not be his full strength. If he goes all out, I'm afraid he won't be weak." However, a man in a black robe sneered, "What's wrong with the Fist Light Mountain? Since you got the treasure, you must know that you will be killed. Besides, when have we, the Go Straight, been afraid of the people from the Fist Light Mountain?" The young man raised his hand slightly. "Get ready. Activate the demonic sound soul extinguishing array." Chapter 2257. Although Han Fei showed a strong side, he wasn't too strong, because he knew that behind this big array, there must be a strong opponent. Otherwise, how could these fellows who had lost their minds do anything to him? If he guessed right, the reason why these people lost their minds and shouted was that they were affected by the golden light. And the person who set up the array probably wanted to take advantage of them. How could this little trick be hidden from Han Fei's eyes? Therefore, he put his strength at the edge of the star transformation stage, and occasionally showed the kind of relatively powerful star transformation stage powerhouses. If he could scare away those powerhouses behind the scenes, it would be fine. But if he couldn't scare them away, then let's see who could laugh in the end. Bam, bam, bam. After all, these powerhouses who had lost their minds were at the blood-burning realm. Although they were all killed by Han Fei in the end, Han Fei also looked quite tired. But thanks to his strong physique, Han Fei tried to absorb the surrounding forces. The powerhouses behind the scenes naturally didn't want to see this scene. At this moment on the giant turtle, someone frowned slightly. This person's physique is extremely strong, his combat techniques are fierce, and he is good at close combat. He has a strong resistance to many great Daos. Judging from his strength, he has probably turned into a star, and the range of his star body is 500,000 kilometers. What do you think? Almost. Not bad, but unfortunately he has already turned into a star, and we can't see his star bead. It's more difficult to kill him directly. Someone sneered. Then lure him to use a star bead. Even though his strength is not weak, he is still far from Yuxian. Everyone looked at the man shrouded in a black robe, and the latter said indifferently, "I'll try." And an old man in the crowd said, "The mountain of fist light can't be underestimated. Yuxian, be careful. Others, if necessary, be ready to take action at any time. This person is suitable for sharpening knives." The people on the giant turtle grinned and nodded slightly. However, their eyes were full of contempt. They didn't think that a body cultivator could resist the soul-destroying technique of the Ghost Straight. Besides, they felt that no matter what, they had to wait for this kid to overcome the soul-destroying demon sound array first. If he couldn't even resist the big array they set up, there was no point in talking about the next step. Over here, as soon as Han Fei killed the 7 crazy heaven-opening state powerhouses, the surrounding void suddenly shook, and layers of ripples appeared in the sea. Woo, it was like a whimper that shook the 4 seas. At first, Han Fei only felt that the sound waves hit his soul, which made him slightly uncomfortable. Following that, the sound waves became stronger, faster, and more secretive. Woo, 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 the sound wave from the void trapped by the strange formation completely disrupted the flow of the sea, causing the area to be filled with murderous intent. This was a formation that directly attacked the divine soul. Han Fei snorted, and a large number of ownerless souls formed a protective barrier. At the same time, soul-driving formations appeared around him. Bang! Whenever the sound wave came, the chaos boundary around Han Fei would be broken once, and the soul-driving array would also collapse once. However, the ownerless souls and the soul-driving array were both simple means that Han Fei was used to. As long as the power of this soul-destroying formation didn't far exceed his own, he would never be seriously injured by this formation. On the giant tortoise, someone exclaimed, "This kid knows how to set up arrays." It's not easy to use the ownerless souls. This requires him to have a certain understanding of the soul, so he can control the ownerless souls like this. No wonder he's a cultivator of the mountain of fist radiance. He's really capable. Someone was praising, but suddenly exclaimed, "Look, Yu Xian is making a move." Suddenly, a phantom of a giant whale appeared in the sealed boundary. The giant whale leaped out of the water, rolled its body, and rushed at Han Fei. On the giant tortoise, someone laughed. Ancient whale, soul hit technique. Yu Xian is using a great technique as soon as he comes up. In the field, Han Fei looked up and saw a giant whale that was tens of thousands of meters long, like a real entity, rushing at him. But Han Fei could feel that it was not a burst of power, but a burst of soul. The giant whale was still in the air, but he had already felt a faint tingling pain between his eyebrows. Han Fei couldn't help but look solemn. What a strong soul impact force. Before the giant whale approached him, he felt that his soul seemed to be about to leave his body. Han Fei was sure that the person who could exert such explosive power was definitely the kind of person who focused on soul cultivation. From the array to the giant whale technique, the other party had been attacking him with soul attacks. Do I look so easy to defeat? Han Fei condensed his fists. The power of the ownerless souls wrapped his arms, and his soul power surged in the depths. Bam! Fist marks burst out, and Han Fei's soul power, which even contained a trace of invincible fighting intent, instantly hit the giant whale's head. BM, 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 the waves rippled, turning into arcs, bursting like spots of light, one after another. The two were in a stalemate for dozens of minutes, and the giant whale was actually melted by hundreds of fist marks. Yu Xian frowned slightly. Is this person a dual cultivator? His soul power doesn't seem weak either. This kind of dual cultivator was rare. Excited to see his prey, Ruo Yu Xian stepped into the boundary and was about to confront Han Fei. However, it was his action of stepping into the boundary that caused the boundary to shake. Han Fei pointed 2 fingers at the center of the array, causing the demonic sound soul extinguishing array to suddenly tremble. Swish! With this tremble, Han Fei turned into a stream of light and was about to appear outside the demonic sound soul extinguishing array in the blink of an eye. However, at this moment, Han Fei felt a killing intent emerging from outside the array. If he went out from there would be a strong master attacking him. Therefore, Han Fei tapped his feet, twisted the space, and retreated more than 100,000 kilometers. In the dark, someone was surprised. This kid has such keen insight. It seems that he has practiced arrays before. In Ruo Yuxian's view, Han Fei had killed 7 heaven-opening state powerhouses in a row, withstood the demonic sound soul extinguishing array, and blocked his blow, which was already taking advantage of him. Who knew that as soon as he came in, this scene would appear? He almost let the enemy escape, which was stronger than he thought. So at this moment, Ruo Yuxian said lightly, "You almost ran away. Your ability to seize opportunities is extremely strong. You're full of energy, unparalleled physique, and you can control your soul. Dual cultivator, you really deserve to be a heavenly talent of the Fist Radiance Mountain." Fist Radiance Mountain? Han Fei thought to himself. Although I consciously wanted to pretend to be him, I didn't expect it to be so smooth. As soon as I attacked, this person mistook me for a disciple of the Fist Radiance Mountain. Han Fei had to wait for an opportunity. Shueisha couldn't attack now. God knows who was waiting for him outside. He had to find an opportunity that could definitely escape. Han Fei's eyes were awe-inspiring. He deliberately let his energy boil and said fiercely, "Are you the person behind the scenes?" Ruo Yuxian smiled faintly. "Sort of. It's a pity. Although I quite admire you, you are destined not to get out of here today. But if you can beat me, I can consider giving you a chance of survival." Shameless boasting. My fists can shake mountains and seas, and my energy can soar into the galaxy. Do I need you to give me a chance of survival? As he spoke, Han Fei had already launched an attack. He hadn't fought with a powerhouse who specialized in soul cultivation. Body cultivators and soul cultivators had always stood on opposite sides, just like divine beasts and ferocious beasts had always been on opposite sides. It didn't make sense. When Han Fei heard about extreme body refinement and extreme soul refinement, he was very eager to see what would happen if the two really fought. Today, although he was not an extreme body refinement cultivator and the other party was not an extreme soul refinement cultivator, in essence, the two sides focused on different aspects. The difference was huge, so he could try and advance. Han Fei punched out like a dragon, like a serpent going out of the sea. The dragon soared into the sky, shrouded in blood, extremely fierce. Seeing Han Fei punch, the powerhouses on the old turtle all sighed with emotion. Someone said, "Body refinement cultivators are extraordinary. I'm afraid no one can block this person's fist mark." Unfortunately, the limitations of body refinement are too great. It's impossible for him to attack us at close range. Someone sneered. That's not necessarily true. Everything depends on the realm of strength. You're only talking about those in the same realm. Someone retorted, besides, this person cultivates both energy and body, so he's not a pure body refinement cultivator. As far as I know, many people on the Fist Mountain have taken this route. Someone shook his head. How difficult is it to cultivate both energy and body? This person must be very talented to be able to cultivate to this point. Otherwise, he might as well focus on one Dao if both his energy and body are mediocre. Someone agreed. Cultivating both energy and body is several times more difficult than cultivating the body refinement school and our soul refinement school. Looking at the people chattering on the giant turtle, not far away from them, a man in golden armor, wearing cloud boots and carrying a jade sword on his waist, sneered in his heart. The man sneered in his heart. What do you know? The Tao of balance is the strongest Tao in the world. Cultivating both energy and body is a matter of course. These people on a go straight are destined to be useless. While everyone was discussing, the two had already started fighting. Han Fei's fist mark was unparalleled, and Ruo Yuxian's eyebrows lit up. In the entire spiritual barrier, 30,000 phantoms appeared, each holding a golden bell and shaking it. Chapter 2258. Bam! 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 Han Fei's fist marks burst out like starlight, and the phantoms of ringing bells all over the sky were collapsing at an incredible speed. However, no matter how the phantoms of ringing bells were broken, Han Fei still felt something different. This person's soul power was so strong that there must be illusions in his attacks. In Han Fei's view, the phantoms of ringing bells all over the sky were not the key. Instead, from all directions, countless sea demons were rushing towards him. These were not feints. These were all real attacks, a kind of spiritual attack. This meant that his opponent's spiritual energy was strong enough to create illusions to confuse him, and at the same time, he was able to unleash a tidal wave of spiritual energy attacks. Wait. When Han Fei's fist marks broke the spell, he suddenly noticed something strange. Although a person's soul power could be very strong, generally, only people who were not proficient in soul attacks like him would directly attack with the power of the soul. On the other hand, those who truly focused on the Tao of the soul had many great soul arts. Although these great arts were performed in different ways, most of them were battles where the soul controlled items. It was just like how he controlled the million knife art. Only in this way could he not damage his own soul and still burst out the combat power of the same realm. And at this time, the only thing to consider was whether he was mentally exhausted. From this short confrontation, Han Fei seemed to suddenly understand what kind of fighting style the experts who focused on soul cultivation had. After understanding the key, Han Fei naturally understood that the so-called various sea demon beast phantoms in front of him were just images given by the opponent's soul power. In fact, these things should just be things like knives and swords, or even pure seawater. As long as it carried the spiritual energy and chaotic energy of the heaven-opening state, even the most ordinary water droplets could also burst out the combat power of the heaven-opening state. Therefore, after understanding this key, Han Fei smiled slightly. He suddenly put his hands together, and his body began to glow with golden light. In the blink of an eye, a golden body of willpower appeared outside his body. Bam! 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 Boom! Boom! The sea demons and ferocious beasts crashed into Han Fei one after another, but none of them could shake Han Fei. Seeing this scene, many people on the giant tortoise exclaimed in surprise, "What kind of power did this guy display? He can actually block Yu Xian's powerful spirit piercing?" It's the will golden body. In a sense, it could also be called a Dharmakaya. Of course, this is a self-defense method that he condensed without cultivating a Dharma body. It can't be considered a Dharma body. Suddenly, the golden-armored young man said, "That person isn't a dual body and energy cultivator. Like you all, he's a cultivator of balance. It's just that you're even more extreme, thinking that it's fine as long as you have enough flesh. Therefore, you do not have a profound understanding of the art of balance. But this person is different. What he pursues is a balance between his physical body and his divine soul. But from the looks of it, his physical body might be slightly stronger. Not bad." At this moment, an old man walked out from behind the crowd. This kid is indeed walking the path of balance. Moreover, he was a person who tried to walk the path of ultimate balance. However, who could truly achieve such an extreme balance? But no matter what, the power of his divine soul is indeed not weak, and he knows how to resist powerhouses of the soul refinement Tao. It seems that this kid's identity is not simple. The golden-armored young man smiled faintly, but it's just passable. He barely qualifies to go to the divine capital dynasty. However, since he appeared here, this person most likely has to give up the divine capital dynasty's competition this time. Speaking of which, when Han Fei displayed the golden body and defended his divine soul, Ruoyo Xin stopped, because he knew that ordinary attacks could no longer shake Han Fei. Therefore, the sky full of phantoms disappeared, and the demonic beasts in all directions disappeared. Ruoyo Xin said faintly, "Interesting. His method of defending against divine soul attacks is not bad. However, next, I will tell you a principle. Blindly defending will eventually lead to failure. Soul absorption. In Han Fei's eyes, a pair of scarlet eyes seemed to appear. The sudden appearance of this pair of eyes shook Han Fei's heart, causing him to be momentarily absent-minded. Then, Ruoyo Xian continued to shout, "Life demon." Han Fei came to a realization. The scene in front of him changed. In front of him, there was a terrifying pressure. Someone was staring at him. When he raised his head, he realized that it was Emperor 10,000 Scales. The 10,000 Scales Great Emperor shouted, "You want to overthrow my 10,000 Scales tribe by yourself? You dare to call yourself the human emperor? Today, I shall imprison your divine soul and let you witness the tribe being a slave for eternity." At that moment, Han Fei's heart was filled with inexplicable anger, irritation, unwillingness, and other emotions. Han Fei wanted to crush the void mark immediately. However, when he glanced at his sea of consciousness, he suddenly regained some clarity. Why am I looking for Emperor 10,000 Scales? Wait. Han Fei's divine soul shook, and he was about to wake up. Huh. Ruoyo Xian was surprised. He felt that his soul absorption power and illusionary power were about to shatter at any time. Immediately, Ruoyo Xian shouted, "Demonic barrier." Han Fei was almost sure that he was in an illusion. Just as he was about to break free, he felt Emperor 10,000 Scales reaching out to him. The destructive power seemed to be trying to make him feel powerless. The feeling of reality made Han Fei a little absent-minded for a moment. Was it an illusion that he was in before, or was it an illusion that he was seeing now? Unfortunately, Han Fei had seen eldest senior brother's power and witnessed Emperor 10,000 Scales and the others' attacks. Therefore, when he saw this creepy illusion, he immediately reacted. Han Fei's pupils suddenly constricted. He took a closer look and saw a divine soul palm right in front of him. It was trying to slap his head. Ruoyo Xian was also extremely shocked. From a moment he tried to absorb the soul absorption power, his soul power had already seeped in. How did the other party react so quickly? Seeing that the situation was not right, Ruoyo Xian immediately made a decision and tried to disrupt Han Fei's clarity for the last time. He shouted in a low voice, "Hellfire." As soon as he shouted, even though Han Fei had already woken up, he could still feel the pain in his head. It was the burning of his divine soul, as if his sea of consciousness was burning. It was as if what he had done was beginning to backfire. Han Fei wanted to reverse time, but in this way, the great path of time would be exposed. He endured this intense pain, and his body burst out with dazzling golden light. He saw the phantom of a Dharma body rising from the ground, but this Dharma body was quite ferocious. It was not Han Fei's own world of laws. This was the Dharma body of the Martial Emperor's inheritance in Martial Emperor City. Since Han Fei comprehended the world of laws, he had not used this firmament martial divine body, but now, Han Fei found that this was an excellent opportunity to practice. Although he didn't know how strong this person's divine soul was, it shouldn't be much weaker than his. Besides, the other party was very good at divine soul attacks. After a series of divine soul attacks, Han Fei felt a little overwhelmed. At this time, Han Fei thought of the extreme body tempering school. They replaced the divine soul with their will and could almost ignore divine soul attacks. The firmament martial divine body carried the will of the martial emperor. Han Fei secretly integrated the will of the invincible realm into it. For a moment, this body was shining with golden light. The 100-meter-tall giant, with golden flames spewing out of his eyes, formed a peerless fist seal and instantly punched out at the speed of light. BM, BM, in an instant, there were two consecutive explosions. One was the annihilation of the divine soul giant handprint, and the other was Yu Xian's body exploding and being hammered into pieces. Han Fei and the firmament martial divine body shook their heads at the same time and broke free from the burning pain of the fierce hellfire. However, Han Fei thought that the other party would reform his physical body and fight him again. However, to his surprise, above the void, a soul shadow appeared, and Yu Xian said, "What a strong Dharma body, what a strong will. However, you want to kill me with this?" You're dreaming. I have cultivated the yang soul, and my divine soul has left my body. What's a mere physical body worth mentioning? At this moment, on the back of the old turtle, many people's eyes lit up. Yuxian has been forced to use his yang soul. This person is extraordinary. I didn't expect that Yuxian would be forced to this point. However, this person also has the help of the will of the Dharma body. Otherwise, I'm afraid he would be defeated. I'm a little curious. What kind of Dharma body is this? No matter what Dharma body it is, as long as Yuxian's yang soul is out, this person obviously lacks the divine soul attack. In this battle, Yuxian is in an invincible position. It was the first time that Han Fei had encountered such a situation. Even when he killed in Taiping and Xiao Shotsong, he didn't encounter such a situation. But at the same time, Han Fei's mind moved. On the little vine, the fifth divine elixir was the divine soul, which seemed to have the same effect as this person's yang soul. Unfortunately, the divine elixir was still a little short of maturity. However, Han Fei's eyes turned cold. How could he kill this person? Since the other party didn't need a physical body, he just needed to destroy his divine soul. Now, the only thing Han Fei didn't know was how much Yuxian's divine soul was compared to his. Han Fei didn't think the other party would be weaker than him, because the other party's divine soul attack was so strong that he could only resist it. Han Fei thought for a while. At present, he could attack the divine soul, such as the yin-yang reincarnation knife, the 100-beast soul-devouring roar, the heavenly god stab, and the ownerless soul, but they weren't powerful techniques. In the past, Han Fei thought he was already extremely strong, and his powerful techniques could destroy the body and the divine soul. In the same realm, few people could match his divine soul. Besides, he wasn't good at the divine soul technique, so he neglected it a lot. Now it seemed that there were all kinds of people in the vast sea. The disadvantage of his divine soul technique was that he couldn't deal with a real soul refinement realm expert. It seems that I have to make up for this shortcoming. Oh, Han Fei roared, as if thousands of beasts were roaring. Han Fei picked up the old techniques again. Chapter 2259. Although Han Fei's soul attack technique was mediocre, it couldn't compare to the strength of his soul. Therefore, Ruoyo Xian naturally blocked it with his soul power. Rumble, however, between the two of them, there was a loud explosion, wave after wave, one after the other, rising and falling. Then, Han Fei pointed his finger, using his hand as a spear and his soul as a spear. However, this level of attack was nothing to Ruoyo Xian, who was extremely good at divine soul power. However, this was enough to surprise Ruoyo Xian and the crowd of onlookers. Someone frowned slightly. This person's divine soul power doesn't seem weak. He can compete with Ruoyo Xian with such little skill. I want to know how much soul power he has. The old man from the Ghost Straight side. Such a person, since he pursues the way of balance, he will certainly pursue the perfect fit of his body and divine soul. Therefore, his divine soul shouldn't be too weak. Otherwise, it will not be in line with his way of balance. What he lacks is the usage of the divine soul technique. Then, the old man smiled and looked at the golden-armored man next to him. The Gate of Heaven is very good at this. He can be said to be the leader of the divine land of the East Sea. I think, young master, you should know about this, right? The golden-armored man said lightly, "This person is not bad. If the divine soul can keep up with his physical strength, he may have a 50-50 chance of winning." Now, what a pity. Suddenly, the golden-armored man's pupil shrank because the scene seemed to have changed. The finger that Han Fei pointed suddenly shone brightly in the air. Everyone felt that the finger was not as simple as a divine soul attack. Huh? Immortal Qi? Everyone couldn't help but wonder, what was the use of immortal Qi here? This was the power of the heaven-opening state combined with the operation of the Great Path. The burst of immortal Qi would at most be a little more powerful. What harm could it cause to Ruoyo Xian? No, there's also evil Qi. Look, everyone immediately saw that the finger burst out two kinds of power, but even so, what was the use? Just when everyone was puzzled, they saw the corner of Han Fei's mouth slightly raised, revealing a cold smile. There's a forbidden technique here. Hiss! In that instant, Ryukshuan's divine soul was just about to unleash a powerful divine soul art when he discovered that his divine soul was unable to form an attack. At that moment, the sword of the immortal evil spirit pierced through his yang spirit. Originally, it was impossible for such a blow to kill Ruo Yuxian, but Han Fei's blow directly pierced through the endless void. After all, Ryukshuan's yang spirit was not a physical body. In terms of soul techniques, Han Fei might not be his opponent, but once his power was imprisoned, the consequences would be obvious. Stop! How dare you? Ruo Yuxian's spirit was directly drawn into the endless void, and the big boss behind him could not sit still at this moment. He acted immediately. Just as the endless void was about to close, he suddenly appeared, directly tore open the endless void, and fished out Ruo Yuxian's yang spirit. However, he didn't expect that Han Fei's purpose was not to kill this person at all. He knew that there must be many strong masters watching the battle outside the boundary. It didn't matter whether he could defeat Ruo Yuxian or not. Therefore, taking advantage of the moment when the strong master behind the scenes made a move, Han Fei directly burst out of the boundary at the speed of light, and with the help of the turbulence of the boundary just now, he instantly left the boundary. No one had expected such a move. Who would have thought that when Han Fei saw that he could kill Ruo Yuxian, he would give up decisively and choose to leave the boundary? As soon as Han Fei appeared, he perceived and saw an old turtle giant beast floating on the sea. On the shell of the giant turtle, there were more than a dozen people, all of whom were heaven-opening rel powerhouses. These people did not look like those in the ordinary sea monster fortresses. Han Fei knew his own combat power. Even if he didn't use the Great Way, ordinary people could not compare to him. But after a battle, he almost failed to defeat a powerhouse in the same realm. And this person also cultivated a yang spirit, which almost made him helpless. Han Fei had no complaints about this, but it made him deeply realize that he was greatly lacking in the battle of divine souls. It was just that the battle with Ruo Yuxian just now was more of a challenge to his extreme combat power in his normal state. It turned out that in the same realm, his current shortcomings were very big, and he was not invincible. He had not even participated in the Divine Capital Dynasty's grand competition of 10,000 years, and he had already encountered such an enemy. If he really participated in the grand competition of 10,000 years, would those people be stronger than Ruo Yuxian? Would there be a combat power more invincible than the Yang Spirit, or a more bizarre Great Way? Even he did not know. Han Fei benefited a lot from this understanding. However, it was a bit too much for these people to just watch the show. At this moment, seeing Han Fei come out, a group of strong people, one after another, surrounded Han Fei. Someone said, "Humph, wanna run. If you don't hand over the rare treasure, there will be no place for you to die today. You have some ability, but you're just one person. Do you think you can take it away from our hands? Hand over the rare treasure, and I may spare your life." Han Fei glanced at the crowd. Yes, these people had set up a big formation, obviously waiting for the rare treasure to appear. At the same time, they sealed off the perception of the outside world, so that they could take the rare treasure alone. However, they did not know that the holy bone had been refined into the god slaying gloves by him. They also didn't know that that thing could not be easily picked up at all. Speaking of which, he had saved their lives. Han Fei glanced at these people and found that except for the old man who had just rescued him and the man in golden armor, the strength of the others seemed not necessarily stronger than Ruo Yuxian. When Han Fei saw the situation outside, he suddenly felt much more relaxed. Since there were no stronger masters, if the other party wanted to strangle him with the power of the Sun Soul, it would be a bit wishful thinking. Anyway, he was here using the identity of Zhang Deiqian, and he was also famous for the sea monster fortress in the boundless world, and now he had crossed territories, so there should not be many people who knew him. In this case, let's eat them in one go. It just so happened that Han Fei needed the Divine Soul technique to make up for his shortcomings, and now was an excellent opportunity. With this in mind, Han Fei immediately made up his mind and did it. The reason why Han Fei decided to make a move was that he didn't think anyone here could kill him. Although these people were tyrannical, the old man just now should be the only super strong master in the late stage of star transformation. No matter how strong that person was, Shueisha alone was enough. And the rest of these people, even if each of them had cultivated a sun soul, so what? They had cultivated a sun soul, and when had he ever exposed his true strength? Therefore, Han Fei directly activated the Great Way, and his eyes turned cold. He burst out at the speed of light, stepped down, and his figure disappeared. The next moment, he saw the body of a heaven-opening state powerhouse of the Ghost Strait suddenly explode. In this group, there were only 3 people that Han Fei could see with their natal marks. Therefore, with this punch, the Great Way here roared, and that person died on the spot before he knew anything. I'm afraid this person never thought that when he died, he wouldn't even be aware of it, right? Oh no, this person hid his strength. In the blink of an eye, the old man who had just fished Ruoyu Xian out of the endless void and had yet to return looked outside the barrier in shock. He looked at the expert who seemed to have changed into a completely different person and revealed an expression of disbelief. He never expected that he would be wrong. This person turned out to be a super strong master. The old man shouted, "Everyone, activate the divine soul technique." Ruoyu Xian just wanted to say something, but the next moment, Han Fei directly shouted, "This place is forbidden." Swish, swish, bm, bam, rumble, rumble. Above the sky, there were 2 more cracks in the way of the heavens, which meant that 2 heaven-opening state powerhouses had fallen. Under the siege of so many people, Han Fei went on a killing spree, which frightened the souls of these people of the Ghost Strait. This person, what a deep disguise. The golden armored man's face changed drastically. As soon as this person came out, he knew that he had been ambushed, and he also knew that those who had lost their minds were just bait. From the beginning, he just wanted to run. But after he came out, he seemed to find that the comprehensive strength of the Ghost Strait was not very strong. So he decided to take action. Moreover, this person was quite decisive. We found that there was only one super master in the late stage of the star transformation realm here. He did not hesitate to attack. This meant that the other party had the power to at least compete with the late stage of the star transformation realm. The golden armored man analyzed the crux of the problem in the blink of an eye, so he did not fight with Han Fei. On the contrary, he secretly retreated to avoid Han Fei's trouble. At this time, the old man of the Ghost Strait returned, but as soon as he came out of the boundary, he suddenly found that a blood fiend had blocked in front of him. This blood fiend stretched out his hand and grabbed, and a long river of evil spirit swept over. The boundless evil spirit instantly swept through the ceiling boundary. The old man changed space and immediately launched God's wrath at the blood fiend, trying to directly attack the blood fiend's divine soul. However, he was shocked to find that this thing had no divine soul at all, and it actually ignored his soul-sucking attack. Oh no, a super puppet at the late stage of the star transformation realm. The old man was shocked. The most annoying kind of battle in the Ghost Strait was fighting with puppets. Because the divine soul was immune, it was not easy to fight. At this moment, Han Fei killed 3 people in a row. Some people's yang souls left their bodies, but this place was forbidden, so they could not directly attack Han Fei's divine soul. But Han Fei was different. With a flip of his hand, a pair of gloves appeared on his hands. As soon as the gloves appeared, Han Fei's strength soared by 30%. Moreover, when he punched out, a strange fiend god, Qi, directly entered the body of the Yang soul. Following that, the strange power seemed to corrode the Yang soul. The latter's eyes turned red, revealing a fierce light, and it actually opened its mouth and shouted, "Divine path! I see the divine path." Looking again, this person was obviously crazy. Chapter 2260. When Han Fei went all out, he might not be as strong as Pan Litian, and he might not be a match for the old man in the Ghost Strait, but was more than enough to deal with these people in the same realm. Of course, these people focused on the power of the soul and might have cultivated the Yang soul. But when faced with Han Fei at full strength, there were too few methods that could be used. In the state of superluminal speed, coupled with the operation of the Great Path, the bodies of these people were just a matter of a punch to Han Fei. However, his god-slaying gloves had the effect of insanity. It might be the residual power of the gods, which could corrode people's minds and make them feel that they had seen the way to God. With this punch, they would lose their minds and fall into madness. Even if he had great soul techniques, there was no place for him to use them. Bam! 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 Han Fei attacked 4 people in a row. Only one of the 4 could barely resist the power of insanity, but the other 3 had gone crazy. After going crazy, they all seemed to think that they had seen the way to God. As soon as they saw each other, they started fighting. For a moment, the few who had gone crazy were fighting. At this moment, someone was shocked. He quickly came to his senses and took out some kind of protective jade slip. Han Fei had been careful from the beginning. If this kind of expert who was good at soul attacks was really summoned, he might not be able to defeat him with his strength. It was not that he was afraid, but that he did not know enough about the divine soul technique. This Yang spirit battle technique must be extraordinary. Just Ruo Yushin alone, his divine soul technique almost made him fall for it. If he really let an expert of this Tao come, he was afraid that he would have no other choice but to escape. The person took out the jade slip and tried to shatter it with a thought, but he suddenly felt a pain in his head. The next moment, the person's head was gone, as if it had been forcibly torn off by something. Han Fei did not expect this. He thought that these people were heaven-opening realm experts. No matter how weak their bodies were, they should not be so fragile. In the end, Little Black bit off this guy's head. Suddenly, Han Fei realized that he had been using the yin-yang grindstone for the past few days. The power of the holy bone had to be purified by the yin-yang grindstone before it flowed into his body. And Little Black and Little White naturally benefited a lot. They directly increased their levels to 99, only one step away from heaven-opening realm. So, it wasn't that the opponent had become weaker, but that Little Black had become stronger. This person failed to crush the jade slip. Han Fei leaped and appeared here. Taking advantage of the moment when the Yang spirit left his body, a fist print pierced through the sky and directly beat this person into a madman. Gotcha! Unfortunately, Han Fei still underestimated these people. Although he was fast enough, these people didn't look like expert from the Sea Monster Fortress. Otherwise, how could anyone take out a protective jade scroll? Buzz, when a void of 1,000 feet suddenly appeared. He glanced at Han Fei, and his eyes glowed with purple light. He opened his mouth and shouted, "Purple Hell Cage." Sizzle. At that moment, Han Fei clearly saw that those people were relieved. Then, Han Fei found that he couldn't move faster than light anymore, because he was surrounded by purple mist. Boom! A bolt of lightning struck down. Han Fei felt a great threat because it was not an ordinary lightning bolt, but a divine soul lightning bolt. Boom! Han Fei, who had lost the ability to move faster than light, was struck on the top of his head. It was as if his sea of consciousness was hit by a strange force. He couldn't help but grunt and bleed from his eyes, nose, and mouth. The first thing Han Fei did was to mobilize the ownerless souls in his body. He stepped on the soul driving array and punched the lightning bolt. Boom, boom, boom! The barrier between the soul driving array and the ownerless souls shattered again and again. In the blink of an eye, there were at least a dozen times. However, before the purple lightning cage was broken, a massive number of soul knives appeared in the cage, trying to penetrate his soul. If he guessed correctly, among these people, there should be others who used protective jade slips, trying to destroy his soul with the help of a late-stage star transformation expert. Damn it! Fuse! Han Fei was enraged. If the opponent really took out 8 or 10 protective jade slips, wouldn't he be facing the continuous soul attack of a super strong master at the late stage of the celestial transformation realm? At that time, even if his body didn't die, he would be struck silly by the opponent. The demon purification pot would help protect his soul, but only in a relative way. More importantly, the demon purification pot would help him eliminate all the souls that attempted to invade his sea of consciousness. However, his soul would still be attacked. With that in mind, Han Fei secretly told himself that he couldn't be at a disadvantage, or there would be no hope for him to turn the situation around. Rip! After a bird chirped, Han Fei's eyes turned red. The Emperor Sparrow and Han Fei directly fused and didn't show up. Seeing the situation, the Emperor Sparrow couldn't help but gasp. You pissed off a bunch of guys who were very good at soul attacks? Han Fei asked, can you break it? The Emperor Sparrow nodded. Yes, but I'll use your body. Han Fei said, take it. Han Fei agreed quickly. The reason why he called the Emperor Sparrow out at this time was that the Emperor Sparrow's inherited techniques were all soul attacks, and most of them were very powerful. This meant that the Emperor Sparrow was also very good at soul attacks. At the same time, the Emperor Sparrow had a super strong body. In any case, it should be easier for the Emperor Sparrow to deal with the current situation. Han Fei's body suddenly straightened up. His face was dignified, and his eyes glanced around as if he were an emperor overlooking the world. The Emperor Sparrow glanced around, and the three phantoms collapsed one after another. It was a battle at the soul level. The Emperor Sparrow forcibly disturbed their minds with the chaotic eyes. In the first place, the protective jade strip only had the power to launch a single attack. Now that it had thrown their minds into disarray, the formation in the area collapsed on its own. Bam! 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 When the purple mist cage exploded, the infinite soul knife and the golden soul lock that was about to catch him also collapsed. How is it possible? On the Go Straight side, a group of people exclaimed, how did this man suddenly break the soul skills of 3 peak stage star transformation cultivators in a row? The next moment, someone looked into Han Fei's eyes and said in horror, you can't. Before he finished, the people who looked into Han Fei's eyes suddenly fell into chaos and froze on the spot. Then, Han Fei shouted in a low voice, demon arrival. At that moment, the 3 of them were covered in deep blue flames. They attacked randomly in the void, as though there were enemies in the void. Then, Han Fei continued, ominous possession. A large amount of ominous chi spread out from Han Fei's body and went into the wind demon and the people who were in chaos. 7 people were enveloped by the ominous chi. Then, they completely lost their minds. However, different from the ominous creatures, they were under the control of the Emperor Sparrow. As the saying went, victory or defeat was decided in an instant. A second ago, Han Fei was still trapped in the purple lightning cage. The next second, the Emperor Sparrow broke out of the cage with Han Fei's body and glanced around. Many people fell into chaos. Of course, among the 7 people, 3 were affected by Han Fei's fist mark and fell into the wind demon state. Anyway, all 7 of them had lost their minds and used all kinds of soul skills on their companions. What a strong body. Originally, the Emperor Sparrow wanted to use the innate savagery combat body, but he found that Han Fei's body was much stronger than his innate savagery combat body. This made the Emperor Sparrow speechless. How could you use such a strong body like this? The Emperor Sparrow's words were imprinted in Han Fei's divine soul. Han Fei, who was watching the battle, couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw the Emperor Sparrow's attack. However, he couldn't control his body now. Wow, no wonder he's a natural-born venerable emperor. In terms of soul skills, venerable emperors are still the best. These people are all trash. However, what the Emperor Sparrow displayed was not only the divine soul path. When he attacked again, he used his fists. As the Emperor Sparrow punched, a Sun Soul and a Heaven Opening Stage expert were not only bombarded by the punch, but their Sun Soul was also shattered. The Sun Soul wanted to gather again, but the Emperor Sparrow punched 7 times in a row. Instantly, the Sun Soul was annihilated and there was a rumbling sound in the sky. The man had been smashed by the Emperor Sparrow's 8 punches. Han Fei was shocked and exclaimed, "Didn't you say that the Sun Soul was indestructible? It's not something that can be destroyed by physical body arts. So how come it's gone in just a few moves from you?" The Emperor Sparrow said with some strength, "This is the Fist Soul. There is no absolutely powerful body in this world, nor is there an absolutely indestructible divine soul. The Fist Intent can destroy the divine soul, but after the Fist Intent comes the Fist Soul. Great skills have souls. When your attacks have souls, you naturally don't need to fear these Sun Souls." Han Fei was dumbfounded. Fist Soul? The Emperor Sparrow moved at the speed of light and appeared in front of another person in the next moment. He punched 7 more times and blew the man up. Then, he said, "It's actually very simple. The fusion of the divine soul and the will can create a sun soul. When the sun soul and the origin great Tao are fused, one can understand the higher level usage of soul power. In other words, any great skill can be attached to the aura of the divine soul. For example, this fist soul can injure the body and destroy the divine soul. In this way, one can achieve Dharma and body double kill." Dharma and body double kill? Han Fei couldn't help but ask, when can one comprehend this Dharma and body double kill? The Emperor Sparrow said, "Enlightenment." Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Enlightenment? Therefore, his questions in the Void Temple might have been too far away from him, so Senior Brother Azure Dragon and the others didn't tell him. Chapter 2261. At that time, Han Fei felt that he was invincible, but in the next second, he felt invincibility was out of his reach. The feeling of loss was indescribable. BM, 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 although DK had just entered the heaven-opening state, Han Fei wasn't. After 8 years of training, he would fight for an hour every day. People like Zhou Jingjing would either chase after him crazily or avoid Han Fei whenever they saw him. After training for so long, he had made some gains. The vermilion bird controlled his body, and once they started fighting, he felt that Han Fei's body was surprisingly useful. He easily killed everyone. The old man who was stopped by Xue Sha roared as he saw the great Tao in the sky. "Stop, villain! Stop! Soul Society, forbidden land of 10,000 demons." The old man couldn't pass Xue Sha's test, so he exploded himself. His flesh and blood spread for hundreds of thousands of miles, spawning demons that swarmed toward Han Fei. After all, Xue Sha was just a puppet. Although he could slowly break through such a large-scale, top-level soul technique, it would take too long. However, he knew that he had to protect his master. In fact, Han Fei didn't necessarily need Xue Sha's protection. DK was having a good time. Anyway, Han Fei had already killed 8 or 9 of the dozen people in the Ghost Strait. The rest were probably infected by the ominous and completely crazy. The golden armored man, who had been watching the battle, stared at the boxing gloves in Han Fei's hands. Because when they came here, those crazy emperors had been hammering the mountain crazily and had said more than once that they saw the divine path. Then, Han Fei came out, escaped from the boundary, and killed everyone. Everyone who was hit by Han Fei would say that they saw the divine path. Obviously, it wasn't brought by Han Fei. The golden armored man could tell at a glance that the boxing gloves in Han Fei's hands were at the divine level, and their quality was definitely not low. Thinking about it again, he felt that he knew what was sealed under the mountain. It was most likely the boxing gloves, a pair of extraordinary boxing gloves. Also, at this moment, Han Fei was attacking everywhere. Even these people on the Ghost Strait couldn't resist Han Fei's fist mark after their yang souls left their bodies. Logically speaking, this was impossible. When a yang spirit left the body, other than the great soul technique that could compete with them, how could an ordinary fist seal penetrate the yang spirit? Therefore, this person also suspected that this fist seal could penetrate the yang spirit. With that in mind, it was not difficult for him to guess that this was at least a high-grade or even supreme-grade divine artifact. That was a little exaggerated. High-grade god tools were still acceptable. The sea realm was huge, and there were many god tool forgers. Although high-grade god tools were rare, there were still a few. However, this was a supreme-grade divine artifact. This was a divine artifact that had been tempered to the extreme. It was not something that could be obtained easily. The appearance of every supreme-grade divine artifact was accompanied by a reign of terror. The golden armored man's heart skipped a beat. He flicked his finger, causing a cloud of dust to dissipate. Then, this person quietly retreated. Most people didn't know when the golden armored man had left. In any case, the golden armored man had disappeared while they were fighting. Han Fei noticed it, but he didn't pay attention to it. It seemed that the golden armored man was not on the same side as these guys who cultivated the yang spirit. Besides, The man left so fast that Han Fei didn't have time to chase after him. But he felt that he still had the multitude nautical globe. After this battle, he would think about killing this guy. No matter what, the trump card he showed this time was a bit big and very powerful. Han Fei didn't know if his appearance would attract the attention of the major forces. But no matter what, he had to minimize the impact of his appearance. On this side, although the old man at the late stage of the star transformation realm had used a trick called 10,000 demons out of the cage, Han Fei was still at his peak. But at this moment, Han Fei was operating the Great Path and his strength was at its peak. Although he was facing the divine soul attack of the late stage of the star transformation realm, it wasn't Han Fei who was attacked, but D. Quebec. Although DK hadn't become an emperor yet, he was almost proficient in divine techniques. His divine soul's resistance was no lower than Han Fei's. DK said, "Your soul power is actually very high, and your willpower is not bad either. Otherwise, you wouldn't have comprehended the invincible road. It shouldn't be difficult for you to become a yang spirit. It's just a matter of time. However, you still need to practice more divine soul techniques in the future. Otherwise, I can't deal with such a situation all the time." Han Fei agreed. From the moment he saw Ryo Xian's yang spirit leave his body, he knew how powerful the divine soul was. If his body was extremely strong, and his yang spirit was also powerful, it should be regarded as a real dual cultivation. Rumble, DK and the old man from the Go Straight really fought for 3,000 rounds. In the end, the old man actually gave up hunting Han Fei, grabbed Ryo Xian, and ran away. The other disciples had all been killed. Originally, he only thought that this was a trial, and Han Fei was just a small interlude in the trial. It could be used as a reference for others to verify his great technique. Who would have thought that they would crash into a rock, and everyone would be wiped out in one fell swoop? At the same time, the old man was also shocked to find that this person was not simple. He had a blood-killing puppet, and he was still so strong after becoming a puppet. How strong was he when he was alive? He must have reached the peak of the star transformation realm. The old man was horrified. Who was this young man who had a puppet at the peak of the star transformation realm? Was he really a heavenly talent of the Fist Radiance Mountain? After the old man ran away, DK said, "Don't chase him. You can't kill that old man even if you catch him. This man's strength is extraordinary. He is a great master at the late stage of the star transformation realm. If it weren't for the blood-killing puppet and me, I'm afraid I'm no match for him with my current means." Han Fei took back his body and took out the nautical panorama. Swish, 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 Han Fei broke open the void one after another, summoned 3 origin seas, and plundered them. After that, Han Fei continued to plunder the 3 source seas with the fishing navigator and Zhang Daqian's body. It was a pity that the navigator could only be used 3 times a day, and it was aimed at people. If Han Fei used the navigator with his real body and then fished it from the river of time, he wouldn't be able to use it either, because the use of this object was only aimed at his real body. Although Zhang Daqian's body was also Han Fei's real body, it was Han Fei's avatar after all. In a sense, the fate of the avatar was completely different from that of the real body, so it could be regarded as a different person. More than a dozen heaven-opening state powerhouses had died here, so it was impossible to search them all in one day. Immediately, Han Fei took out the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler. After a round of tests, he found that the divination showed that he was in a desperate situation. Han Fei was shocked. This was something he didn't expect at all. Just a dozen years ago, he had just faced a desperate situation in the number 3 revival land. However, he encountered a strong master like the blood-killing puppet. This was a powerhouse on the verge of the Tao proving realm. Only at this level was he judged to be in a desperate situation. But he had already experienced a battle that was at least in the great misfortune realm. Then, he found himself in a desperate situation. What the hell was this place? He had only dug out 3 treasures, and he was already in a desperate situation? At this time, how could Han Fei still care about the origin sea of these heaven-opening state powerhouses? With a swoosh, he dashed away and found an empty mountain. Han Fei immediately said, "DK, I'm afraid you'll have to exert yourself again today, and it's very likely that you'll have to use the Eye of Disaster. DK was stunned. What did you do again? DK was speechless as well. Didn't you just King fight? I just went back to the Origin Sea to take a rest, and you woke me up again. Han Fei said, I'm afraid I'm going to experience a situation of certain death today. DK. Han Fei had already found that a desperate situation was a strange fate that couldn't be avoided at all. Sometimes, if you deliberately avoided it, you would end up in a desperate situation. Han Fei cursed. He came here to cultivate, and he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to polish himself and achieve a balance between his body and soul as soon as possible. But now, he had only dug out 3 treasures, and he was already in a desperate situation. Wasn't this a trap? With a thought, Han Fei summoned Zhang Daqian, and so did Zhou Jingjing. He had planned to use Zhou Jingjing as bait, but he didn't expect that he might need Zhou Jingjing to save his life. As soon as Zhou Jingjing came out, she immediately said, Are we going to start? However, Han Fei shook his head and said, Look at the sky around you. Zhou Jingjing looked around and suddenly raised her eyebrows. She exclaimed in surprise, Did a strong powerhouse die here? And a lot of them? Han Fei nodded slightly. This place is more dangerous than I imagined. At least, this is not a place where you can be bait. Then, Han Fei looked at Zhou Jingjing and said, Now, I want to make a deal with you. Zhou Jingjing was shocked. What deal? Han Fei grinned. Wait for me outside the God's Ruin. You're not allowed to leave until I come out. If I come out, you won't leave. I can give you a great opportunity. Zhou Jingjing was surprised. She had sensed that Han Fei actually intended to let them go. But now he wanted her to wait for him outside the God's Ruin. She didn't know what exactly happened in the meantime. She guessed that something must have happened to Han Fei. However, Zhou Jingjing was puzzled. Why do you want her to wait for him? It shouldn't be meaningful to just wait, right? Zhou Jingjing asked. What do we need to do? Wait? Han Fei shook his head slightly. I will have an incarnation follow you. In the next few years, you don't need to do anything except wander around the periphery of the God's Ruin. By the way, don't make enemies easily. Don't let them destroy you. Take care of the incarnation. Zhou Jingjing had a guess. Was Han Fei not sure if something would happen to his original body? So, he left an incarnation in case of any special situations? Han Fei nodded. But to ensure that you are trustworthy, you must give me your essence, blood, and soul. You should know that I have a navigator. Once something happens to my incarnation, you can imagine the consequences. Zhou Jingjing was silent for a moment. Will you control us like a moving castle? Han Fei shook his head. No, I'll pay you back later. After a long time, Zhou Jingjing took a deep breath and seemed to have made up her mind, so she said resolutely, Okay. Zhou Jingjing figured it out. Han Fei was very strong, so strong that he could be said to be at the late stage of the star transformation realm. Besides, Han Fei could escape from the 3 masters of the Crab King city, which proved his strength. Since Han Fei asked her to take care of an incarnation so carefully and solemnly and promised her a great opportunity, with Han Fei's personality, it was impossible for him to deceive her. Otherwise, how could he feel at ease? After a while, after Han Fei took Zhou Jingjing's soul and essence blood, he asked Zhang Daqian and Zhou Jingjing to leave. Chapter 2262. Han Fei knew that he was in a desperate situation and couldn't put all his trump cards in one basket. If Zhang Daqian left, he would have a way out because little Fatty was with him. Of course, Han Fei didn't expect that he would be in such a desperate situation. After all, Han Fei would rather entrust his life to little Fatty than to his eldest senior brother. If it wasn't necessary, why would he want to die? As for whether Zhou Jingjing and the others would be in danger, Han Fei wasn't worried. This was just the periphery of the God's Ruins. With the strength of Zhou Jingjing and the others, it was impossible for them to be killed in one fell swoop. As soon as Zhou Jingjing and the others left, Han Fei followed them and entered the Origin Sea with a thought. Han Fei didn't know why he was in a desperate situation, but now, excluding eldest senior brother, he only had the Blood Fiend as his trump card. The Blood Fiend was still in a desperate situation with him. which meant that the blood fiend would be completely suppressed. At this time, it was useless to rely on others to avoid the desperate situation. Han Fei could only focus on himself. How to improve his strength was the key. Although he couldn't improve much in just one day, he had to make every bit of improvement he could. At the same time, he had to keep himself in his peak state. The treasures that Han Fei had obtained so far were moonlight essence. He had collected a lot of this stuff, which could promote the growth of the golden jade essence. Heavenly jade essence. This jade could be melted into the body, directly refined and assimilated into the bones, which could strengthen one's physique. God's crystal, which contained the Tao of the gods and could be used to see a trace of the great path of the gods. The Tao of the gods could also absorb a trace of the divine soul to strengthen the divine soul and flesh. These three treasures could be said to be rare treasures for body cultivators, which couldn't be obtained easily. Unfortunately, completely refining and absorbing those three items was not something that could be accomplished within a year in the Origin Sea. At the very least, it would take decades, maybe even decades. Now, he only had 1 day in the Origin Sea. Even if he spent 1 day in the Origin Sea, he would only have 256 days in the Origin Sea, which was less than a year. It was impossible for him to digest these things. Han Fei looked around at the massive resources in his Origin Sea, the surging spiritual spring, and the lake-shaped essence of earth veins. All the things he had looted in the wilderness over the years were here. In terms of quantity, it was probably enough for him to open up tens of thousands of kilometers of his Origin Sea. The reason why there were so many was that Han Fei had attacked a lot. The number of sea monster fortresses that had been harassed by him could reach 100. With such a huge amount of resources, even if he were to return all of them now, he would only be able to build a slight foundation for himself. It would not be easy for him to directly go through the consolidation state. Phew, looks like I have to take that step. After careful consideration, he knew that it was time to practice the last level of the void fishing art. Originally, Han Fei didn't want to cultivate this last level too early, because this level was for venerable emperors. Han Fei thought that it would be safer for him to practice this technique after he turned into a star and became 30 to 50% stronger. However, from the looks of it now, he no longer had the chance to do so. If he wanted his strength to skyrocket, he would have to pay the price. He had to practice the last level of the void fishing art. However, the God's Ruin was obviously not suitable for practicing the last level of the void fishing art, because the baptism of thunder had become a basic requirement of the void fishing art. Han Fei used to think that he had to go through the baptism of thunder to deduce the void fishing art, but now it was different. The prerequisite for every level of cultivation was to go through the baptism of thunder. If he couldn't do it in the God's Ruin, then Han Fei could only cultivate in the Star Ocean. He had no choice. In the God's Ruin, he might fall into a desperate situation no matter where he went, so the best way was not to run around. However, he didn't know what kind of baptism of thunder he had to go through to practice the void fishing art in the Star Ocean. But the only thing that comforted Han Fei was that he was only practicing the technique, not going through a tribulation. Otherwise, with the resources he had, he would probably die a dozen times in the Star Ocean. Han Fei broke through the quagmire of the Star Ocean and stood in the Star Ocean. Looking at the twinkling starry sky, he couldn't help but make up his mind. Swish, DK was dragged out by Han Fei and said in surprise, "Don't tell me I'm in a desperate situation? Why are you in the Star Ocean?" Han Fei said, "I'm going to practice a technique. I may have to go through the baptism of thunder later. I'm not afraid of the baptism of thunder, but I may be seriously injured. If I'm seriously injured, or if I can't resist the sleeping power of the Star Ocean, you have to take me back to the Source Sea." DK held his head high and seemed a little curious. Although he could communicate with Han Fei through the Soul Sea, he hadn't seen Han Fei undergo the baptism of thunder before, so he didn't know this. Therefore, DK just nodded. Okay. Since he was going to practice an Emperor-level technique, of course, Han Fei had to prepare something. He had already taken out all the liquid divine light that he had used the Heaven Awakening divine skill to create 10,000 years of vitality. Han Fei sat cross-legged, holding the god's crystal in his left hand and the heavenly jade essence in his right hand. He swallowed all the moonlight brilliance in his body. For a moment, Han Fei felt that his body was raging. The power of the moonlight brilliance impacted his flesh and bones, trying to melt into his body. Since things had come to this point, he had to do it all at once. Han Fei didn't say a word. In the blink of an eye, a strange meridian pattern appeared. When he performed the 9th level of the void fishing art, the place where Han Fei was seemed to be abnormal. There were no tribulation clouds in the star ocean, but he sensed that the aura of the heavenly way in this place suddenly became extremely dense. In the star ocean, a roar that ordinary people couldn't hear burst out. This sound was directly imprinted in Han Fei's mind. Han Fei ignored the sound and continued to run the strange meridian pattern. However, it wasn't as easy as the first time. The first time, Han Fei just guided it with his qi. The second time, the immortal spiritual energy in his body surged like a stream, but he felt an abnormal resistance. Boom! Inexplicably, in the darkness of the star ocean, a bolt of lightning suddenly fell and hit Han Fei. Sizzle, cough. Han Fei was shocked by the lightning. The milky white brilliance on the surface of his body splashed out and scattered into specks of brilliance. The so-called specks of brilliance were none other than the flesh and blood on Han Fei's body that had exploded and splashed out. Only one bolt of lightning made Han Fei moan, and he was shocked. Is the lightning in the star ocean so dangerous? Why does it feel like a tribulation? DK, who was just watching curiously, couldn't help but straighten his body when he saw this. Heavenly tribulation? No, it's the Thunderbolt pool. Did he trigger the Thunderbolt pool? DK was surprised. He could tell from this bolt of lightning that it wasn't a heavenly tribulation, but the power of lightning was quite terrifying. Maybe this bolt of lightning was less than the power of a heavenly tribulation, but it had at least 10 to 20% of the power of a heavenly tribulation. Boom! As soon as the first bolt of lightning fell, the second bolt of lightning came right after. Boom, boom, boom. In just a minute, dozens of bolts of lightning fell, which dumbfounded D. Quebec. Is it a Thunderbolt pool baptism? DK wasn't sure, but he felt it wouldn't be easy to pass through such a dense power of lightning. After about 20 minutes, the moonlight essence that Han Fei had swallowed was completely merged into Han Fei's body by the lightning. The price was that Han Fei's skin and flesh were torn, and he was covered in blood. The electric arcs were crackling on his body, almost forming a cocoon of electric arcs. About 20 minutes later, crack, the heavenly jade essence around Han Fei had cracked, and the surface of Han Fei's body had been completely burnt. There was probably only a layer of shell left. About 80 minutes later, the heavenly jade essence suddenly exploded, and the last bit of energy was absorbed into Han Fei's body. There was still a divine crystal in his hand, which was shining brightly. However, the power in the divine crystal was also being consumed quickly, but the frequency of the lightning strikes didn't decrease. Even Han Fei himself was a bit shocked. This lightning baptism might last for an hour. How long has it been? The 3 rare treasures are almost used up, as Han Fei expected. Although the god's crystal was extraordinary, it only helped him hold on for less than 10 minutes before it exploded with a bang. Boom, 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 boom. The lightning continued to strike, and Han Fei didn't have any powerful rare treasures. Everything, such as ultra-quality spiritual stones, spiritual fruits, spiritual spring, and earth vein essence, gushed out crazily. However, every time a bolt of lightning struck, a massive amount of such resources would inevitably be directly evaporated. Not long after the power of these resources poured into Han Fei's body, they were smashed apart by a bolt of lightning. Maybe it was because the level of the resources was slightly low, but even with a massive amount of resources to protect his body, Han Fei was still injured. Furthermore, every bolt of lightning that struck down would aggravate his injuries. Boom, boom, boom. About half an hour later, Han Fei was almost blasted into a mummy by the lightning. The venerable emperor frowned in the periphery and couldn't help but feel a little anxious. It had been almost half an hour. Why hadn't the lightning ended yet? If it continued, Han Fei would be killed. Crack! Suddenly, with a soft sound, Han Fei's whole body cracked and then fell apart. It looked horrifying, but in fact, it was Han Fei's burnt body. Now, the shell was cracked and then exploded. Inside the shell was Han Fei's newborn skin, which seemed to be only a thin layer. It seemed that the old skin had faded and the new skin hadn't grown yet. Divine light burst out of Han Fei's body. It was the liquid divine light of the Apocalypse divine technique. Han Fei was now forced to use the divine light to prolong his life. Boom! Boom! In the star sea, Han Fei was shining like a star. Less than half a day away from him, a middle-aged man in the inner circle of the god's ruins said solemnly, "A high-quality divine artifact contaminated with divinity. Are you sure?" In front of the middle-aged man, a young man in golden armor nodded. It might even be an ultra-quality divine artifact. With this item, that person almost single-handedly slaughtered a team of people in the Ghost Strait. By the way, that person also has a super puppet in the late stage of the star transformation realm. That puppet is extremely powerful. Even Elder Qin Yuan of the Ghost Strait can't control it. The middle-aged man sneered. It's not that the puppet is strong. It's Qin Yuan who can't control it. A divine artifact contaminated with divinity must belong to the door of heaven. Chapter 2263. Han Fei had been struck in the sea of stars for more than half an hour. His body was almost dried up, and his vitality was insufficient. The only thing that made Han Fei feel fortunate was the sharp increase in the number of golden jade essence. If he had only produced 8 drops of golden jade essence in his previous 300 years of cultivation, then, as his strength rose, the number of fortuitous encounters increased, the consumption of the Saint Bone, the replenishment of the Moonlight Essence, and even the supply of the Heaven's Path Crystal and Heaven's Path Jade Essence. Under the baptism of lightning, he produced more than 100 drops of Golden Jade Essence. Although this didn't seem to be a lot, with the Golden Jade Essence he had accumulated before, the number reached 160 drops. Although Han Fei didn't know how many drops these 160 drops were, the number was 20 times that when the Golden Jade Essence was just produced. Besides, this lightning baptism didn't just let Han Fei produce more Golden Jade Essences. He wanted to use the lightning baptism to polish his body and soul and repair his foundation. If he cultivated step by step, Han Fei knew that he might have to stay in the wilderness for 40 or 50 years to completely solidify his foundation. However, it was different with the lightning baptism. Lightning execution could eliminate evil, temper the body, and cleanse the soul. If it weren't for the fact that he had no other choice, Han Fei would never choose to cultivate the 9th level of void fishing at this time. In fact, Han Fei really couldn't bear it anymore at this moment. Although half an hour had passed, and the intensity of the lightning had almost been halved. However, the resources he had on him were almost depleted. The liquid divine light had long been used up, and now he needed to occasionally use the apocalyptic divine technique to keep himself alive. However, because he was within the range of the lightning baptism, it was difficult for the apocalyptic divine technique to coexist with the lightning. So when the lightning fell, the apocalyptic divine technique would be annihilated. When the lightning disappeared, Han Fei used the apocalyptic divine technique. If he had to use the two at the same time, the effect would be reduced. Gotcha! Crack! When Han Fei had no powerful resources and effective supplements, his body began to crack, and dense cracks spread all over his body. Occasionally, a certain part of his body would explode and golden blood would splash. Occasionally, a certain part of Han Fei's jade bone would make a sizzling sound when it was struck. Han Fei was afraid to hear the sound of the jade bone cracking. Once the jade bone cracked, it meant that the power of the lightning baptism was still beyond his endurance limit. After all, ordinary body refinement school cultivators might be able to reconstruct their bodies frequently, but that was because it was very easy for them to do so. But at Han Fei's level, the cost of rebuilding his body was very high. What he wanted to rebuild was the collapse of his body that had been tempered countless times. If the fragments of his physical body were still there, it wouldn't be a problem. However, If the fragments of his physical body were also destroyed or separated and sealed, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Boom! When the power of lightning broke through his body and flowed on his jade bones, Han Fei's bones were trembling as if they could crack at any time. Just as Han Fei was feeling extremely nervous, he felt his body suddenly shake. At first, Han Fei was a little surprised, wondering if the jade bone had cracked somewhere. However, he suddenly felt that something was amiss because he felt that he had suddenly comprehended many heavenly Tao laws in his mind. It was as if there was a lot of heaven and earth Tao aura drilling into his body. Han Fei's eyes lit up. This feeling was the best time to merge with the heavenly Tao. If the heaven and earth Tao aura could merge with his own Tao, he could use more of the power of the heavenly Tao for his own use. In this way, there was nothing to be afraid of about the lightning baptism. Suddenly, the heaven and earth Tao aura burst out of Han Fei's body. The road of invincibility, the time Tao, the space Tao, the Tianqi Tao, the gravity Tao, the yin-yang Tao, when the various Taos merged with the heaven and earth Tao aura, Han Fei felt the heaven and earth Tao aura protecting his body. Boom! At this moment, Han Fei's body was like a swamp. When the lightning fell, he felt as if he had fallen into a swamp. Then, the lightning was twisted by Han Fei's Tao, and the purifying power dispersed around his body. The eyes of the onlookers lit up when they saw this. The Tao of balance has reached this stage. The Emperor Sparrow was a little surprised. Han Fei hadn't shown his talent in the Tao of balance before. However, this round of lightning baptism had triggered such a huge amount of heaven and earth Tao aura. This was the symbol of the Tao of balance, and borrowing the power of heaven and earth. This meant that Han Fei's divine soul and body had begun to reach a balance, and he had reached the point where he could borrow the power of the heavenly Tao to strengthen himself. Another half an hour later, the power of the lightning baptism was basically over. From a few strikes per second to a few seconds per second, Han Fei didn't have to worry about not being able to withstand it at all. At this time, the Heaven Awakening Divine Technique was activated, and Han Fei's injuries were collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Spiritual fruits, and essence from the Origin Sea were replenished one after another. Han Fei's qi and blood went from weak to strong, and gradually surged like waves. When Han Fei's body completely swelled, the Tao aura flowed on his body, and his aura seemed to have risen to a level visible to the naked eye. When the lightning baptism was completely over, before Han Fei had time to check his information, the great technique of the 9th level of the void fishing art appeared in his mind. Void theft art. When Han Fei really understood the so-called void theft art, he couldn't help but gasp in shock. This was actually a weird art that could steal other people's power. If the time fishing technique could fish out the old body of something from the past, then the time fishing technique could be used to fish something out. In that case, the void theft art could instantly steal someone else's great Tao, great art, actions, and even a sentence that someone else had said. As a result, others couldn't use the power that had been deprived repeatedly. Besides, it was not as simple as deprivation. Han Fei could choose to use the power that had been deprived. Gulp! Han Fei couldn't help swallowing. He knew that the 9th level of the void fishing art should be very strong, but he didn't expect it to be so strong. Stealing other people's things and turning them into your own use, there was actually such a weird technique in this world. This kind of power was fished out with the Tao aura of heaven and earth. It could be said that the void fishing art could use heaven and earth as a hook to fish for everything. Of course, such a heaven-defying technique would naturally have its limitations. That was, every ability that was taken away did not last very long. Besides, at the same time, it could only deprive 3 abilities of experts in the same realm, and the deprivation of 3 abilities could only be maintained. If it exceeded the limit, one of the deprived abilities would inevitably fail. However, when Han Fei learned that this great technique could actually deprive stronger experts of their power, that was to say, he could deprive an emperor-level expert of a certain kind of power. However, the deprivation of realms could only deprive one kind of power. If it exceeded 2 realms, this technique would be ineffective. Of course, it was impossible to exceed 2 realms. If it exceeded 2 realms, it would be equivalent to the level of gods. When one reached the level of gods, it might not be of much use to deprive others of their power with an emperor-level technique. However, in any case, the power of the void theft art was beyond Han Fei's imagination. After feeling the 9th level of the void fishing art, Han Fei was pleasantly surprised. He clearly had some strange insights. This was not the end of the void fishing art. It seemed that no one had ever practiced the 9th level. This strange feeling swept across his heart. Han Fei was overjoyed and immediately looked at his personal information. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 101, sky opening, C10,000 family tree, 200016, chaotic energy, 660, 000, spiritual power, 5461258, perception range, 6. 5 million kilometers, strength, 500, 9698 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 99, second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 100, main art, void fishing art, level 9, void theft art, ultimate emperor, shoot. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. He knew that his physique would definitely soar after swallowing the moonlight brilliance, the god's crystal, and the heavenly law jade essence. However, he never expected that his physique would suddenly soar to more than 5 million waves. Is this the change in physique brought by the gold jade essence? Han Fei suddenly got up. At this moment, his body had almost recovered under the nourishment of the heaven-opening divine art. He didn't dare to waste time, because time couldn't be accelerated in the universe. Therefore, Han Fei withdrew to the Origin Sea as soon as possible. As soon as he entered the Origin Sea, Han Fei summoned the law of heaven and earth. He vaguely felt that his body carried part of the Tao of heaven and earth. It felt as if part of his body had been integrated into the Tao of heaven. For example, if Han Fei said, "I want fire," he could give birth to a flame with just a thought. This was not as simple as God said, "Let there be light." This was the power of fire that Han Fei could obtain from the Tao of heaven and earth. Similarly, Han Fei could also strengthen his own Tao or even his own strength from the Tao of heaven and earth. Han Fei tried to summon this power. Unfortunately, to his disappointment, he could only use the Tao of heaven and earth to enhance his combat power by 10%. This result was still a little disappointing for Han Fei. During the discussion in the Void Temple, Senior Brother Azure Dragon said that the Law of Balance could increase his strength by more than 50% with the help of the power of the Tao of Heaven, but he could only increase it by 10%. It seemed that there was still a long way to go. Han Fei estimated that the gap should be because of the huge gap between his physique and soul. Even though he had been baptized by lightning and his previously unstable foundation was basically consolidated, he was still a little bit away from it. Besides, the law of balance was extremely difficult, so it was already not bad that he could borrow 10% of its power. Although his physique had skyrocketed, there was still a gap between the power of his soul and soul. Han Fei saw hope, because he could still convert the power of his soul and his physique. Although this kind of conversion shouldn't be too much, otherwise it would still affect his foundation. But he could convert it a little and sharpen it a little. Coupled with his daily cultivation, the law of balance wouldn't be far away. Maybe it had already been balanced before he went to the divine capital dynasty. Chapter 2264. Although the completion of the 9th level of void fishing gave Han Fei a lot of help and also increased his strength a bit, and he could even directly use the power of the way of heaven to enhance himself. However, in the eyes of a real strong master, this growth in strength was still not enough. According to Han Fei's judgment, his current strength was still not comparable to Old San of the Crab King City, and he could at most hold on for half an hour. Therefore, although his strength had skyrocketed this time, it was still not enough to face a real strong master. One day was too short. He had spent more than 2 hours to use up most of the resources on him. If he wanted to continue to improve his strength in such a short time, There was no other way but to continue to devour energy crystals. However, devouring the energy crystals would definitely cause an imbalance between his divine soul and physical body. This would cause all his previous efforts to go to waste. The enhancement of the power of the way of heaven that he had worked so hard to activate would inevitably disappear because of this situation. Therefore, except for normal cultivation, Han Fei would not use energy crystals again. With a thought, Han Fei appeared in the outside world. There was only one day in total, and he didn't want to hide in the Origin Sea. A strong master who could put him in a desperate situation might not be able to hide from a void node like the Origin Sea. Once the other party found the position and compared it to the Sea of Stars, it was very likely that they would find out where he was. He wanted to use the nautical panorama to find a safe point. But when he thought that he had used up all the times of the nautical panorama today, Han Fei couldn't help but feel that he was really stupid. But Han Fei didn't hesitate. The backlash of the nautical panorama was the backlash of luck. He was looking for a chance of survival. But if the backlash of luck happened, he might even be pushed into the abyss, which made him a little hesitant for a while. Forget it. Sooner or later, I'll have a day. I don't know where to run. So be it. Han Fei no longer hesitated. He directly took out the nautical panorama and said, "Point to my way of survival today." No longer hesitated. Han Fei took out the nautical panorama and said, "Point to my way of survival today." The nautical panorama immediately turned, but its direction gave Han Fei quite a shock. God's ruin. Han Fei couldn't help frowning. When he entered the God's ruin, he knew that it was divided into the inner periphery and the outer periphery. In fact, there were definitely many treasures hidden in the periphery. From his harvest over the past few days, he could tell that what everyone lacked was an opportunity to find treasures. For example, the existence of the heavenly chalcedony itself could conceal one's own opportunity. For example, the sacred bone could even create a self-sealing enchantment. Without the guidance of the navigator, it was impossible to find it in this endless mountain range. If he could find it, there was really just pure luck. The inner area of the God's ruins was not a good place to be. Some people were looting the inner circle, but those who really broke into the inner circle had a slim chance of survival. This was one of the main reasons why Han Fei did not directly target the inner circle. However, the navigational panorama was pointing in the direction of the inner area, which meant that compared to the danger they would encounter, the inner area was a safe path. At least, it was not as scary as the danger they would encounter. He didn't have much time to think. It might not even be 10 seconds. Suddenly, Han Fei's face changed drastically. He sensed an unprecedented crisis. At this moment, a divine sense swept through the place where he was. F***CK, so fast? Han Fei didn't know what to say. Is this the backfire of the multidimensional navigator? But it's too damn fast, isn't it? Can't you at least give me some time to think? At this moment, Han Fei no longer held back. He burst forth with a great path, instantly breaking out at the speed of light, and rushed toward the inner area of the God's ruins. Less than 20 million kilometers away from where Han Fei was, 3 middle-aged men stood with their hands behind their back. One of them looked up at the starry sky. Then, he looked at Han Fei's departing figure and smiled. It should be this guy. I just turned into a star at 3 times the speed of light. I really don't know who gave him the courage. I can't run away. At that moment, the 3 of them moved. If Han Fei had seen their outburst of speed, he would have been extremely shocked. Among the 3 of them, the slowest one had reached 8 times the speed of light, and the fastest one had reached 9 times the speed of light, or even higher. What did this mean? According to the theory of Senior Brother Azure Dragon and the others, under normal circumstances, the speed of the heaven-opening state was only within 10 times the speed of light. Since this person's speed was more than 9 times the speed of light, it meant that he was already on the verge of proving his Tao. His strength was probably at Zhao Honghuang's level. 1 was at Zhao Honghuang's level, and 2 were at Pan Litian's level. God knew why such a combination would appear in the wilderness. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei did not dare to delay for even a moment. He ran at full speed. However, in this situation, After only 5 seconds, Han Fei felt a wave of energy 6 million kilometers behind him. F*CK. He's so fast. Han Fei felt terrible. He did not know if it was because the other party was too fast, but Han Fei could not even see the other party clearly. He only felt that the void was fluctuating and the danger was getting closer. Kid, you can't run away. Stop. With such an absolute advantage in speed, Han Fei could not do anything. It was not that he was slow, but that the other party was too fast. When the middle-aged man behind Han Fei was less than 100,000 kilometers away from Han Fei, he pointed his finger lightly, and a starlight burst out from the gap between his fingers. He felt that with his speed, he would pass by Han Fei in the next moment and poke his body into pieces. Then the interception would be a success. However, at the most critical moment, Han Fei suddenly turned around and glanced at him, and the man, who was moving at 9 times the speed of light, came to a halt. He seemed to have forgotten about the superluminal speed. His body suddenly lost balance and crashed toward the seabed. Boom, thud, as if countless nuclear bombs had exploded, the man's body created a deep trench under the seabed. The roars and explosions spread out and probably didn't stop until they spread for more than 100,000 kilometers. At that moment, in the middle-aged man's perception, Han Fei's speed suddenly soared from 3 times the speed of light to 6 times the speed of light. What astonished him was that this kid's superluminal outburst was actually so familiar. Wasn't that his own unique Great Tao? Han Fei had already figured out how to run. However, when his speed only reached 6 times the speed of light, he felt terrible. Something was wrong with the last level of void fishing. Although void fishing could make someone else's power his own, he was not someone else's. However, he was not someone else. His physique, power, and Great Tao were all different from that middle-aged man. Therefore, he couldn't completely copy the man's speed. His current body could bear the power of 6 times the speed of light at most. It was not that Han Fei didn't want to go faster, but he couldn't go faster at all. He had reached his limit. Han Fei was a little disappointed, but he didn't think there was a problem. It was just that his expectations were too high. Otherwise, if the void-stealing technique was really so terrifying, wouldn't it be possible to completely steal the power of a venerable emperor regardless of his body's limit, so that he could gain the full combat ability of a venerable emperor in a short time? This was so powerful that it made one's hair stand on end. However, this speed theft gave Han Fei an unexpected benefit, which was that Han Fei had to perceive a brand new way of space to be able to move 6 times the speed of light. Yes, this man used the spaceway to boost his speed to more than 9 times the speed of light. However, in contrast, Han Fei also knew the spaceway, but he couldn't achieve such a fast speed. The fundamental reason was that he didn't have enough understanding of the spaceway. However, the moment he stole this man's power that was faster than light, Han Fei suddenly understood a lot about the usage of the spaceway. Han Fei couldn't help but feel shocked. So the most powerful thing about the void-stealing technique was not only to steal other people's power, but also to steal other people's understanding, great paths, and even the principles of other people's power. That was F*King terrifying. Didn't it mean that as long as he stole more and more power, he would eventually understand more and more things? Given time, he would be able to achieve a comprehensive improvement in his combat techniques and understanding of great paths with just void stealing. Just thinking about it made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. Swish, swish, as soon as Han Fei escaped from the perception range of that expert, 2 experts who were equally fast caught up with him. One of them was shocked. "Eldery, what are you doing?" The middle-aged man who had just come out of the trench looked awful. He said, "Take me with you. Let's go after him." Although the 2 of them were confused, they took the middle-aged man with them without hesitation. Then, the middle-aged man said, "This guy is weird. I'm afraid he has more than one ultra-quality divine weapon. He can deprive me of my speed and make me temporarily forget the super speed of the spaceway. Except for the super speed of the spaceway, my understanding of other great paths can only reach 7 times the speed of light at most." What? Deprive him of his speed? How can he do that? I've never heard of it. The middle-aged man said, "I don't know. It may be a special great path. but he can't completely grasp my speed. So, when he explodes, he can only move 6 times the speed of light. It's not difficult to catch up with him if I spend a little time. Chapter 2265. Han Fei didn't dare to stop at this moment. The crisis of desperation was not that simple. Although his temporary breakthrough might change his luck, he didn't dare to be careless. However, he did not dare to be careless, because the crisis that had enveloped his body had not disappeared. At this moment, he was rushing toward the interior of God's ruin at a terrifying speed of 6 times the speed of light. Because he didn't know if the stolen power had a time limit, and if it did, how long could it be used? These were all things that he needed to consider. Han Fei also wanted to accelerate the time around him with the Great Path of Time. However, maybe because his speed was too fast, the Great Path of Time and the Great Path of Space somehow intersected. He didn't have time to accelerate the time around him, so he couldn't continue to increase his speed. Then, to Han Fei's shock, after only 10 seconds, a blurry figure behind him caught up. Oh, not just one, but two. Han Fei couldn't help but feel his blood freeze. There were more than one of them. One of them was the middle-aged man who had just attacked him, and he didn't know the other person. It seemed that he was also with them, and this person also had such a fast speed. He caught up with the middle-aged man. After running for less than 1 second, Han Fei judged that the person chasing behind him had reached 8 times the speed of light. There's a secret. Han Fei's first thought was not how he could escape this disaster, but he confirmed one thing, which was that God's ruin was a secret. Otherwise, it was impossible for 2 supermasters of this level to appear in a row. 8 times the speed of light, 6 times the speed of light. Han Fei estimated that according to this speed, the other party would catch up with him in 4 seconds at most. In other words, he wouldn't even need 1 second. However, for now, Han Fei was still confident that he could continue to steal this person's speed. However, at the moment when the second middle-aged man was 1 million kilometers away from him, the first middle-aged man that was being dragged by the second middle-aged man suddenly broke free from the other middle-aged man's grasp and burst forth with superluminal speed that was even faster than his current speed. Shoot! Han Fei couldn't help but be horrified. These people also took more than one great path. This great path of space had been taken away by him, but there were other great paths that could allow them to move faster than the speed of light. Now, Han Fei didn't think about anything else at all. Anyway, he couldn't let these two catch up with him. If an expert of this level caught up to him, he would not be able to block it. So, when Han Fei looked back again, the two of them cast protective barriers at the same time and even used Tao patterns to block his divine soul. However, in the next moment, both of them lost their speed at the same time and fell directly into the seabed of the pit. Boom, boom, great waves surged at the bottom of the ocean again. 2 trenches appeared, crushed by these 2 individuals. Countless creatures were smashed to death by these 2 individuals. But at this moment, Han Fei didn't leave. He suddenly found that his understanding of void theft was a bit too simple. So that these 2 people can't chase me, why should I just deprive them of their speed? If they had other great Daos of speed and continue to chase after him, how would he be able to deprive them? Therefore, Han Fei did not escape. Instead, he swept past the 2 of them and directly gave up on the 2 great Dao insights that he had stolen. Instead, he directly deprived their consciousness. He wanted to fundamentally stop these 2 from chasing him and make them fall into a deep sleep. Wouldn't his goal be achieved this way? However, the next moment, Han Fei felt that he was too naive. The 2 powerhouses fell into a state of chaos at the same time, but they were still far from falling into a deep sleep. Han Fei immediately found that he was not strong enough to make them fall into a deep sleep. He could only temporarily make them fall into a state of dizziness and chaos. Besides, Han Fei could feel that with the strength of these 2 people, they couldn't last long in this state. He estimated that if they could last for half an hour, they would be grateful. Ignoring these 2 people, Han Fei continued to run for his life. According to his calculation, it might take more than an hour to reach the God's ruins. Han Fei couldn't help but be speechless. Why was the wilderness so big? Why was the sea realm so big? I'm already running faster than the speed of light, but it still takes so long to run from one place to another. This is too much. Han Fei didn't know that in fact, in the dark, there was actually someone watching here. However, this person didn't pay attention to Han Fei. His eyes had been fixed on the two powerhouses. When he saw these two people fall into a state of chaos with his own eyes, his heart couldn't help but tighten. He didn't know what method the kid had used. About 100 breaths later, Han Fei was running wildly when he suddenly saw the space in front of him suddenly open, and there appeared a white door of light. Han Fei saw a figure bathed in white light standing at the door. This heavenly clan, the gate of heaven? Han Fei's heart trembled. This door was too unique. Before Han Fei entered the Sea Realm, he had heard Chu Hao talk about the heavenly clan, because Chu Hao was sure that a small vine of the demon purification pot was in the heavenly clan. After entering the chaotic wasteland, he often heard about some super forces in the Sea Realm, including the Gate of Heaven, the Boundless Mining Area, the Fistlight Mountain, the Eastern Sword Pavilion, the Ghost Strait, the City of Terror, and so on. Although people didn't know what kind of forces these were, it didn't prevent people from knowing that such forces existed in the divine land of the East Sea. No wonder there are 3 people on the other side. Han Fei thought for a moment. The one who found him first should be the fastest and the strongest. But he didn't expect that he would have such a powerful skill as void theft. The second one to catch up should be relatively faster. He caught up with the first person, and the first person gave him information, and then the two of them caught up together. However, these 2 people didn't know that his void theft could be used 3 times, so they were tricked again. And this person should be weaker than the other 2, but probably not by much. However, Han Fei couldn't figure out why the other party's experts were chasing him. When did the Gate of Heaven and the Ghost Strait have such a close relationship? Were they trying to avenge the people in the Ghost Strait? Han Fei couldn't help but stop, because the person opposite him didn't do anything, and he didn't see the person clearly, so he wasn't sure if the person was a real person. The reason why he dared to stop was that the 2 people behind should still be trapped in the chaos and hadn't woken up. Even if another strong person like that came, he still had Shui Sha to use. But one thing he had to figure out was why the other party was looking for him. Han Fei said solemnly, "Who are you? Why are you stopping me?" The strong man in the light gate took a few steps out, revealing his resolute face. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. This middle-aged man's temperament was exactly the same as the previous 2 people, with an inexplicable arrogance. The middle-aged man said, "Originally, I just wanted to take away the divine artifact with divinity from you, and I might not really kill you. But now it seems that your secret is probably not as simple as that divine artifact. You just turned into a star, but you were able to trap 2 strong people at the edge of the Tao proving realm. It seems that you have a lot of secrets. Divine artifact with divinity? God-slaying gloves?" Han Fei immediately understood. Suddenly, he understood a little. Because the God-slaying gloves were made of holy bones, they could allow people to see strange paths of divinity, and they were listed as high-quality divine artifacts. When fighting with those people in the Ghost Strait, the God-slaying gloves erupted with terrifying power, especially when the Emperor Sparrow used its own body to directly penetrate their sun souls. This scene should have been seen by others, and Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. At that time, among all the people, the only person who was a little strange was the man in golden armor. That person was the first to run. At that time, Han Fei thought that he was a disciple of some big clan and slipped away when he saw the situation was not right. Now it seemed that that person's attire and temperament were somewhat similar to these people. He was probably from the Door of Heaven. In an instant, Han Fei's many puzzles were instantly solved. The people of the Heavenly Clan were exploring the secrets of the God's ruins, and there happened to be a few super strong people here. His weakness was that he knew too little about the Sea Realm, so he didn't discover the identity of the man in golden armor immediately. Otherwise, if he had killed that person immediately, these things wouldn't have happened now. Now that he had exposed too much, even if he gave the God-slaying gloves to them, this person probably wouldn't let him go. Thinking of this, Han Fei immediately sneered. "If you want my treasures, then come and take them." At this moment, Han Fei was 5 million kilometers away from that person. This was the distance he deliberately kept. If he was too close, he was afraid that he would be blocked by some kind of big formation and unable to escape. Without saying a word, Han Fei rushed out again. But at this moment, in the direction that Han Fei escaped to, a figure walked out. In an instant, that figure burst out with a terrifying speed that was at least comparable to his own. Han Fei was shocked. With a flip of his hand, Shueisha appeared and rushed towards the figure, while he turned around and ran in another direction. If Han Fei's guess was right, since the man in golden armor ran away, he wouldn't forget the existence of Shueisha. Now that there seemed to be a lot of people on the other side, even if he had to give up Shueisha, he had to save his life. But on the other side, as soon as Han Fei ran out, he saw another figure blocking his way. That figure was holding a sword, and it burst out with power that was definitely at the late stage of the star transformation realm, slashing at Han Fei. In such a situation, Han Fei didn't dare to be careless. With a thought, the figure in front of him suddenly collapsed, and a sword shadow appeared in Han Fei's hand. It was the sword shadow just now. At this moment, Han Fei gave up 6 times the speed of light and obtained this sword shadow. He thought that he could steal speed at any time, but in the face of these strong people, he couldn't resist at all. But he was shocked to find that this was actually a F** King clone. After being deprived of the power of this sword shadow, this clone actually shattered. F***CK. Chapter 2266. When Han Fei found that the man was just a clone, he immediately understood. There were only 3 strong people at the late stage of the celestial transformation realm. This undoubtedly gave Han Fei a shot in the arm. He was afraid that there were still strong people behind. If that was the case, even if he had the void stealing technique, what could he do to these people? However, even if 2 people failed to catch up, the man in front of him was not easy to deal with. He obviously already knew that he had the void stealing technique. So, he took out a clone to intercept him. Sure enough, when he stole the power of the sword, the middle-aged man who walked out of the light gate suddenly made a move, and a white sword light suddenly appeared in front of Han Fei. Han Fei only had time to block this attack with the power he stole. Clang BM, the place where Han Fei was instantly detonated, and his whole body was directly blasted 100,000 miles away. His body kept retreating in the void, and there was a slight dent in his chest. The middle-aged man seemed a little surprised. This person's physique was actually this strong. Although he stole the power of his blow, it was just an ordinary blow. And this time, he used a full 80% of his strength in an attempt to directly pierce through him. Cough, cough, Han Fei spat out a mouthful of golden essence blood, and before he could stabilize his body, another void appeared behind him. This time, Han Fei learned his lesson. He knew that this person should be just a clone, so he didn't pay attention to this clone. Instead, he controlled Shueisha to attack the middle-aged man. Shueisha naturally rushed over immediately, but this time, Han Fei casually punched out, tried to slightly block the attack of the clone. As a result, with a bang, the fist mark suddenly burst into pieces, and the clone, which should have no combat power, burst out a terrifying power and almost pierced Han Fei with his sword. Dong, dong, boom, Han Fei broke through the void again, and was knocked into reality by the clone from the void, hitting the seabed and creating a trench. Cough, cough. At this time, Han Fei saw the main body and Shueisha rushing towards him at the same time. At that moment, Han Fei ran the great Tao, and the god-slaying gloves appeared in his hands. Sacrificing punch. The middle-aged man pressed his palm at Han Fei, trying to kill Han Fei with one slap. However, with the full power of the Great Path, the power that Han Fei could unleash was probably not inferior to his. He punched out, setting off a terrifying explosion in the area where the 2 of them were, and the turbulence of the sea surged outward wildly. When Shueisha arrived, his withered hand slapped the middle-aged man's body. The middle-aged man's body withered at a visible speed. Clang, deprivation. This middle-aged man wasn't stupid. After clearly discovering that Han Fei had the ability to steal other people's power, he didn't intend to use his main body to attack, or he wouldn't use his main body unless it was absolutely necessary. Therefore, the person that Han Fei and Shui Sha pierced through was just a clone. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and a sword light flashed. Han Fei, who was already prepared, didn't even look back. The next moment, the sword light behind him disappeared and reappeared in Han Fei's hand. Holding a sword in one hand and the nautical globe in the other, Han Fei charged in the direction of the nautical globe. Bang! The terrifying sword Qi cut through the void, cut through the illusion, swept thousands of miles, and cut out a phantom in the void. At the moment Han Fei slashed out this sword, he gave up the power to control the sword, turned to look at the phantom, and with a cold look in his eyes, he continued to steal power. This time, what Han Fei stole was the opponent's instantaneous reaction. Puff, the phantom who was about to attack, suddenly fell into a daze and didn't react in time to block Han Fei's sword. Finally, when the sword Qi rushed over, it directly pierced through the phantom. The result made Han Fei's heart turn cold. This turned out to be another clone. The other party had already left at the moment when he determined his position, and he had to bear the backlash of luck brought by the nautical globe again. Han Fei suddenly had a realization. The consciousness of the first two strong masters he stole seemed to be about to be broken by the other party. So fast, Han Fei was horrified. He couldn't continue to fight. This King bad luck came so suddenly. He could have withstood at least half an hour, but now the other party broke free of him within half an hour. If the other party really chased after him, with his current strength, it would be impossible for him to escape. At that moment, Han Fei put away the nautical globe, looked at the empty light gate in the void, and said lightly, "You don't dare to come out to see me." However, in the void, 5 people walked out in a row. The middle-aged man sneered. "Why wouldn't I dare to come out to see a junior like you? For now, the power you can steal is limited. When you stole my first power, your 6 times the speed of light disappeared. I guess you can't steal multiple powers at once. You should be able to steal 3 powers at the same time, but you've already used it on 2 of them, so you can only steal 1 power from me at a time. You want to force my body to show up so that you can directly steal a certain power from my body and buy time for you to escape. I have to say, this is a kind of divine technique. I will search your soul and find out your soul." Han Fei frowned. "Do you think you could defeat me?" The middle-aged man snorted coldly. "You are just a kid who hasn't turned into a star. Do you think you can escape? Even if you're a genius, how can you escape from my palm?" With that said, the middle-aged man smiled contemptuously. "Woo, in your nautical globe, it can find me. It seems that it is also a great treasure. You have 2 rare treasures and a weird divine technique. If you were born in our heavenly clan, we would definitely cultivate you well. What a pity." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Really? By the way, I have something to tell you." The middle-aged man sneered. "You're just bluffing. Do you think you can escape with such a little time?" Han Fei scoffed. "Hey, what I want to tell you is that I greet your ancestors." The middle-aged man's eyes turned cold. Not interested in wasting time with this kid, he directly rushed at him. However, in front of Han Fei, the river of time suddenly appeared, and a figure seemed to want to drill into the river of time. The middle-aged man sneered. "How dare you enter the river of time? But come out." Bam! The middle-aged man stepped into the river of time. The moment he entered the river of time, he felt that his ability to move was deprived, and his body was rapidly decaying. But the next moment, it turned out that this person was just a clone. Just at the moment Han Fei attacked, outside the river of time, the middle-aged man appeared in an instant and hit the river of time, blasting Han Fei out. After this blow, the middle-aged man just wanted to disappear, but he felt that nothing could appear in his mind, and he fell into chaos. At this time, another Han Fei appeared, and he sneered. "Do you think you're the only one who can send a clone?" Han Fei didn't try to stuff this middle-aged man into the river of time, or bring him to a certain period of time in the past, because there was a time limit to stealing the other party's consciousness. Once he entered the river of time, the other party might wake up instantly. Then all his previous efforts would be in vain. Han Fei's face was slightly pale. When he returned to the outside world, he used the Apocalypse divine technique to heal himself and set off at full speed again. Because he had experienced the great path of space of the middle-aged man before, when Han Fei operated his own great path of space, he could already burst out at 4 times the speed of light, which was a small gain. On the basis of 4 times the speed of light, Han Fei accelerated himself with the great path of time, so that even if he didn't steal the other's speed, he could still exert a speed of nearly 6 times the speed of light. He didn't dare to hesitate and moved forward at full speed, because the strongest of the 3 should have woken up. He had only left them behind for 100 seconds in total, and he had been delayed for more than 10 seconds. If the other party chased him at 9 times the speed of light, it wouldn't take long for them to catch up with him. In less than 100 seconds. At the place where Han Fei and the many clones were fighting just now, the leader of the heavenly race grabbed the void and pulled the man out. This man frowned. He felt it was ridiculous. The 3 of them, who were almost at the peak of the star transformation realm, were defeated by a kid who hadn't even reached the star transformation realm. As soon as he woke up, he tried to wake up the other person, but he found that the other person's consciousness was blurred and in chaos. But since the kid didn't take advantage of the chaos to attack them, one reason was that he couldn't kill them, and the other was that he didn't dare to stay. Since he had woken up, they could naturally wake up too. It was only a matter of time. Therefore, when he saw the clones fall into chaos, he grabbed at them casually and continued to chase after Han Fei. The door of heaven had already become enemies with this person. Even if they didn't become enemies, this person had too many secrets. The purpose of this trip was to investigate the gods' ruins. It was a pity that they couldn't enter the inner periphery of the gods' ruins, but they encountered such a strange guy in the outer periphery. If they could capture this person, they might be able to gain some secrets. Chapter 2267. After this battle, Han Fei was shocked to find that even though the void-stealing technique was extremely powerful, it was still not enough in front of a real powerhouse. This was due to his lack of basic strength. Although he could barely fight with a powerhouse in the late stage of the star transformation realm after activating the Great Tao, the gap was still a bit too big. In particular, at the heaven-opening realm, one could actually send a clone at any time. Even without the heaven-opening realm, a sea-opening realm powerhouse could also send many clones at any time as long as they were willing to use their divine soul power. When one reached the heaven-opening stage, they could easily take out a portion of their spirit's power to create a powerful identity with the power to launch a single attack. Therefore, after knowing the horror of the void-stealing technique, the people of the Sky Clan were unwilling to fight him head-on. The reason why he was able to force that person to appear in his original body was because he wanted to penetrate the river of time. A clone might be able to do it, but its power was not enough. Because of this, Han Fei was able to force him to appear for a moment and seize the opportunity. And the him in the river of time was not his current self, but his past self. Taking advantage of the moment, he entered the river of time. He fished up his past self with the time fishing technique. As for his true self, he had used the Gemini Divine incantation in the previous battle and hid his body in the black mist. Therefore, the result seemed simple, but the process was not simple at all. In general, Han Fei was quite satisfied with the result of this battle. This meant that he temporarily had the capital to compete with a late-stage star transformation realm powerhouse. As a person who had only been in the heaven-opening realm for more than 300 years, being able to compete with a late-stage star transformation realm powerhouse, or even a powerhouse on the verge of the Tao-proving realm, even in the sea realm, was a sensational thing. But what Han Fei couldn't figure out was what the gate of heaven meant. Was it a gate? Things couldn't be so simple. He knew too little about the Sky Clan. He only knew that outsiders called the gate of heaven and that it was a major force in the East Sea Divine Land. The status of the Gate of Heaven was equal to that of the Divine Capital Dynasty and the Terra Capital. It was even more famous than other forces, so it was impossible for them to appear just to show off. Just like the triangular divine seal of the infamily in the chaotic wasteland, the gods' arrival was equally terrifying. They claimed to be able to borrow the power of gods. Han Fei wondered if an emperor-level master would be able to cast the gods' arrival. If there were, did it mean that not all the gods had fallen? Of course, these were all Han Fei's assumptions. He just felt that there was something wrong with the gate of heaven. Once he escaped this time, he would definitely study it carefully. As the saying goes, know the enemy and know yourself, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. After 270 breaths, Han Fei had no idea if there was anyone chasing after him, but he knew that he had to make the best use of his time to escape. He was still a distance away from the inner area of the god's ruin. He estimated that in another 200 breaths of time, he would have been running for almost an hour. If he were to unleash his superluminal speed, he would probably be able to reach the inner area of the god's ruin in another 200 to 300 breaths. However, the more he didn't want something, the more likely it would happen. Han Fei continued to run wildly. In less than 10 minutes, a voice appeared in his mind. You think you can run away? Mother asterisk cur. Han Fei didn't know what to do and kept an eye on this person. At this moment, the power that he had deprived had all disappeared. This meant that the two people who had fallen into chaos had woken up one after another. What Han Fei was worried about now was not that the person behind him was chasing him, but that the two people who had fallen into a deep sleep would attack him together. At this moment, hearing this person's voice transmission, Han Fei felt terrible all over. After knowing that Han Fei could steal their power, the middle-aged man in the lead would definitely not be stupid enough to rush up and fight him alone. If it were Han Fei, he would definitely throw his two companions into his sea of origin. If this person was not as strong as the previous two, he should be able to take them with him. There was no reason for him to leave them where they were. It was just that Han Fei didn't know all this. At this moment, this person really caught up with him. Han Fei's heart was solemn, but he didn't stop running wildly. Two figures appeared one after another, one behind Han Fei, and the other on Han Fei's side. One of these two people was the strong man who had just fought fiercely with him. But Han Fei didn't see the strong man who could burst out at 9 times the speed of light. The other party's speed was far faster than his, which meant that he was probably in front of him. Han Fei's heart sank. Behind him, the middle-aged man who had just fought fiercely with him said coldly, "Boy, even if the gods come today, they can't save you." Han Fei ignored this person. He wanted to continue running forward, but the two people quickly approached him. However, Han Fei didn't use the void-stealing technique. These two people were not stupid. Since they dared to chase him, they must not be stupid. How could they make the same mistake again? Therefore, the two people who were chasing him now were just clones. With the strength that the doppelganger could sustain, maintaining such a high speed for 10 breaths of time was already not bad. Therefore, their purpose was to intercept Han Fei. Swish, swish, the two clones attacked one after another. They didn't hide their identities. In the short fight, since they had figured out Han Fei's means, it was naturally very easy to find a way to deal with it. Sure enough, at the moment when the two clones attacked, a clone projection also appeared in front of Han Fei at the same time, and 4 of them appeared at once. However, Han Fei didn't even blink and directly rushed at the 4 people. Why are there 4 clones here? Of course, I'm testing them. Han Fei knew very well what these people were thinking. They were testing to see if Han Fei could steal the power of these 4 clones at the same time. The 4 clones attacked at the same time, almost blocking Han Fei's way. In fact, these people had basically come to a conclusion, but just in case they tried this time. And Han Fei had nothing to hide. They didn't know who he was. So far, he had shown the void-stealing technique, the god-slaying gloves, a strong physique, the great path of time. However, in addition to these great paths, he still had many great paths. Therefore, as long as he could escape, Han Fei didn't mind being exposed this time. Swish, at the moment when the 4 people were about to attack, the attacks of 3 of the clones were instantly stolen by Han Fei. Han Fei stretched out his hand and waved, and 3 big techniques instantly smashed at the 4th clone. Boom! Han Fei swept past and didn't care about the final situation of the battle at all. This was just a tentative attack. He needed time now, and 1 breath was also time, right? In the void in front of Han Fei, 3 middle-aged men were walking side by side. One of them said, "Sure enough, this kid can only steal 3 times at a time. In this way, we don't even need to do anything. Our clones should be able to pierce through him." Another person shook his head. Not necessarily 3 times. Maybe he is just doing it to show you. After all, everyone wants to keep a trump card in their hand. However, I think your idea of using clones to fight is correct. This kid's methods are weird. I don't want my real body to suffer again. Otherwise, I'll lose my face. The middle-aged man in the lead said, "We can give it a try." Han Fei knew that nothing good was waiting for him. At this time, he couldn't do nothing. For now, the void-stealing technique couldn't give him a sense of security. The only thing that could give him a sense of security were the 3 void marks that his eldest senior brother gave him. However, Han Fei knew that he had to face a lot of things. At present, there were 3 emperors on his must-kill list. If he relied on his eldest senior brother, how many times could the void marks help him? Besides, after today, the Heavenly Clan would also be on his list. At least, if he didn't turn the world upside down, he wouldn't be able to get over it. At this moment, Han Fei's void lines reached into time. He was looking for who he should fish up and who he could fish up. 12 clones suddenly appeared in front of him, which made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. Son of AB asterisk TCH, if I had a chance, I would definitely kill you. Han Fei asked. Emperor Sparrow, do the people of the Heavenly Clan know you? Emperor Sparrow replied, I know them from my inherited memory, but I don't have any contact with them. As a primeval beast, I usually fight with the divine beasts and don't care about those humanoid clans. Hearing this, Han Fei immediately said, How many clones can your Eye of Cholera affect at the level of the Blood Fiend? 3, but they must be clones or, at most 1, and the duration of the Eye of Cholera is very short. Han Fei grinned. Okay, fuse. Swish, a pair of black wings suddenly grew out of Han Fei's back, and his eyes turned scarlet. Looking at the clones opposite him, it was meaningless to turn around and run, because the 3 experts were definitely stronger than him. Seeing that Han Fei didn't intend to stop at all, the 3 experts couldn't help but wonder what else Han Fei could do. However, Han Fei's eyes lit up. Among the 12 clones, 3 of them were lost for no reason, and the attacks launched by the other 9 clones were instantly stolen. In just a moment, the 6 clones lost control. Sure enough, he has a backup plan, but it shouldn't be that weird great technique, but his associated spirit. The leader sneered. Even so, he can't make it. Just as the leader said, even if Han Fei stole 3 streams of power, it was still not enough. Those who were affected by the Eye of Cholera would attack randomly, but they wouldn't be accurate. In the end, there were still 6 clones. One twisted the void and sucked Han Fei into the crowd, so that he couldn't escape, and the other slashed out a terrifying sword light at Han Fei. The rest had different methods, but they all rushed at him. Han Fei stepped on the ground and made a prompt decision. The 3 streams of power he stole detonated at the same time, and an endless void vortex appeared here. Because they were clones, it was difficult to maintain the follow-up power after the power of this clone exploded. Therefore, all of a sudden, the 12 clones, together with Han Fei, fell into the endless void. At this moment, one of the clones used the Great Tao of Void, directly twisted the void, and took Han Fei out. They wanted Han Fei's treasures and divine techniques. Why would they want to fall into the endless void? Looking at the 20 clones around him, Han Fei took a deep breath. He knew that if he continued to play like this, he would be killed sooner or later. He immediately roared, Disaster! Disaster! I. Chapter 2268. When the strong master caught up, Han Fei knew that if he didn't have any special means, he wouldn't be able to escape. He didn't have any powerful weapons on him. At the heaven-opening realm, the only things that were useful to them were the secret treasures of the Emperor level. Of course, even if they had rare treasures, they wouldn't dare to take them out at this moment, because they didn't know if he could steal their treasures and divine weapons. But this kind of strong master at the Star Transformation realm didn't need treasures like divine weapons to deal with Han Fei. Just like now, the more than 20 doppelganger projections were suppressing Han Fei. At this time, Han Fei had no choice but to launch the Eye of Disaster. He couldn't run away now. Han Fei simply stopped running. With a thought, Shueisha was released. Following Han Fei's command, Shueisha immediately rushed out. Then, Han Fei sneered. You three, you want to kill me with just your doppelgangers? Don't you think you're underestimating me? At this moment, Han Fei held his head high, looking down at the battle in front of him, his eyes full of disdain. The three strong masters of the Tian clan looked pale at this moment. When they saw Shueisha destroy a doppelganger with one blow, they had already judged his combat power. How could Shueisha, who was on the verge of Dao confirming, be controlled by such a kid? What should we do? Although that kid can only steal power 3 times, this kind of crafty technique is too terrifying. He can even steal our thoughts and Dao. If his strength is equal to ours, who under the Emperor level can do anything to him? Yes, this kind of crafty technique shouldn't exist. How can there be such a weird technique in this world? The leader frowned and said, "This technique can't be so invincible. We can't resist it, but maybe we don't know the reason. Or maybe there are some limitations of this technique that we don't know. Since ordinary doppelgangers can't stop him, let's send stronger doppelgangers. For now, it seems that this kid can't fully use Shueisha's real strength. This is our chance. I'll block Shueisha." Han Fei ignored the doppelgangers. Although this was not the primitive ancient land, Shueisha could use more than just evil qi. After being turned into a puppet, he would be able to call upon the power of heaven and earth on his own. Just 20 celestial transformation grand late-stage avatars could only last a few dozen rounds against blood fiends. In the blink of an eye, 7 or 8 celestial transformation late-stage clones had been killed. During this period, of course, some clones passed by Shueisha and went straight for Han Fei. But after all, it wasn't his original body, and he didn't have a continuous outburst, so he could take away their power. With the power of this clone, Han Fei directly rushed into the array and fought with Shueisha. Boom, boom, boom. In the god's ruins, many people were watching the Sea of Stars because there were suddenly 4 large stars in the Sea of Stars that were incomparably bright. This sudden situation was naturally noticed by many people. But this time, no one was willing to join the fun in the direction of the explosion of starlight. How could anyone who dared to shine so brightly in the Sea of Stars be an ordinary person? Everyone looked at the stars, searched for enemies, and hunted for a long time. For example, it would take a lot of effort to search for prey on a moving fortress of sea monsters. Because the starlight was not bright, prey was hard to find. But today, the big stars were shining brightly, flashing with light. Something big must have happened. Otherwise, how could it be so bright? It was caused by the abnormal use of the power of the Great Path in the Origin Sea. At this moment, Han Fei had already defeated 70% to 80% of this group of clones. Han Fei sneered. 3 stinky pieces of SH*T from the Heavenly Clan. Are you really not going to come out? If you don't come out, I'm leaving. If you don't kill me today, next time I meet someone from the Heavenly Clan, I'll kill one if I see one. And if I see a pair, I'll kill a pair. Our enmity has been sown. Humph, you brat, don't talk big. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 5 figures descended from the sky in a row. Han Fei's heart trembled. These were still clones, and the other party didn't hide them. However, this doppelganger was on a completely different level from the previous one. Just like Han Fei could use the void descent technique, he could summon clones of different levels and strengths according to his needs. And these 5 clones, their strength might be the same as the clones just now, but their continuous fighting ability was definitely different. Among them, the leader's body was glowing with red light, holding 2 swords in his hands. He waved his sword casually, setting off a sword tide, and the sword light almost blinded Han Fei's eyes. The man went straight to the blood fiend, entangling with a long dragon made of murderous intent. With a thought, Han Fei activated the great path of heaven, and a terrifying power poured into his body. The power of the master holding the 2 swords was suddenly reduced by 70%, while Han Fei's strength skyrocketed. As for Han Fei, his strength skyrocketed. At the same time, he deprived the consciousness of 2 of the clones. Han Fei laughed and said, 3 sons of cheese. Are you so poor? You want to kill me with just 5 clones? I wonder where your confidence comes from. The 2 clones fell into chaos and attacked indiscriminately. and the clone that had been entangling the blood fiend, because of the great loss of power, was blasted back 30,000 miles by the blood fiend. Han Fei's strength skyrocketed, summoning thousands of miles of knife waves, overwhelming his two clones. Behind, the three people of the Heavenly Clan looked calm. They didn't think that the 5 clones could take down Han Fei. However, the 5 clones did control Han Fei. At this time, in the field, for more clones descended, and the leader of the Heavenly Clan said curiously, "You know that with your current means, you can't win at all. You can make the 3 of them lose control and seize their abilities. Plus this blood fiend, plus yourself, 8 clones should be the limit you can bear. I want to see how you're going to deal with these 9 clones." The leader was not in a hurry, as if he was not in a hurry to kill Han Fei at all. If it was just him alone, he might not be able to take down Han Fei with 9 clones. However, there were 3 late-stage star transformation cultivators here. Although they were not perfect, it was more than enough to create a few super clones. In fact, when Han Fei saw the 4 clones appear, he was really worried. The Eye of Disaster hadn't caused any abnormalities yet. If it dragged on for too long, maybe he would have been killed by them. The Eye of Chaos broke out, but this time, the clones were not the kind that could only be used once, so only 2 clones were out of control. Seeing this scene, the leader of the Heavenly Clan couldn't help but smile. "Whoa, it seems that your power is limited. The stronger you are, the less likely it is to lose control. I overestimated you. So what other trump cards do you have now?" At this moment, the void suddenly changed, and the clones that were out of control were isolated by the void. The blood fiend was teleported away by some kind of spatial force. Here, there were 3 sane powerhouses left. Although Han Fei had stolen the power of the leader's clone, it was still unrealistic to fight against 3 at this moment. As soon as the 2 sides clashed, Han Fei fell into the void storm. This was the opponent's Tao, and Han Fei, who also walked this Tao, was not as deep as the leader's. So although he tried to stir the void, his power was soon suppressed. As for the other 2 clones, one was good at sword techniques, and the other was good at palm techniques. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei's scalp was numb. Clank, clank, BM, BM, BM. However, as soon as the 2 sides clashed, they found that their terrifying power couldn't penetrate Han Fei. Although the sword chi cut Han Fei's skin and flesh, it couldn't cut through his J-bones. Although the palm technique exploded, it couldn't crush Han Fei's flesh and blood. Although the void storm was violent, Han Fei's physique was too strong, and the effects seemed to be the same as the sword chi. Even though Han Fei was covered in wounds in the blink of an eye, these clones were also injured. Oh, heaven and earth law. Han Fei completely ignored the energy pouring out and performed the golden fist mark. In an instant, he punched thousands of times, causing huge waves and the void to explode. The 3 clones fought with Han Fei for more than 10 minutes, but this guy still maintained such peak power. The 3 people behind the scenes looked horrified at this moment. This kid shouldn't be so strong. One of them said, "Did he use a secret method?" Another person said, "I don't know why, but I can't see the depths of his soul sea, but when I looked at the star sea, I found that he hasn't turned into a star yet." The leader's eyes turned cold. "Yes, I think so too. Now that you said that, I'm even more sure that he hasn't turned into a star." At that moment, the 3 of them were shocked. A person who hadn't turned into a star, even if he was a peerless heavenly talent, could resist the siege of the 3 clones, which meant that his strength had skyrocketed at least 3 times. And this was just their conservative estimate. In fact, based on the strength of the top heavenly talents of the Heavenly Clan, if a heavenly talent who hadn't turned into a star wanted to be comparable to the 3 clones, his strength would at least skyrocket by more than 5 times. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to compete with their clones. Bam, bam, bam. Exchanging injuries for the 3 clones, Han Fei was counting the time. In another 7 or 8 minutes, he might need to reverse time. And at the moment when time was reversed, the 3 of them might attack. For a heaven-opening state powerhouse, they could step into the river of time for a short time. As long as they killed him in the river of time, There would be no possibility for him to reverse time. Therefore, 7 or 8 minutes later was the key. At this time, Han Fei suddenly had a great sense of crisis, because he saw a figure descending. This was the one who summoned the light gate before and had fought with him. However, this time, Han Fei felt that this person was very similar to his original body. Han Fei was just about to deprive this person of his consciousness and let him attack randomly, but a new projection appeared behind him again. Han Fei knew that the three of them were serious. This clone probably carried at least 30 to 40% of their strength. Han Fei asked, "Emperor Sparrow, where is the calamity? Why hasn't the calamity arrived yet?" Just at the moment when Han Fei asked this, suddenly, the ground sank, the seabed collapsed, and a muddy color flew up. Around him, the void twisted and endless void vortexes appeared. Han Fei felt his vision go black, and when he opened his eyes again, there was nothing around him. There were no clones of the heavenly clan, no seawater, the air was dry, the earth was dry, and his perception couldn't spread out. Before Han Fei could react, the Emperor Sparrow automatically canceled the fusion. The next moment, a voice appeared in Han Fei's mind. "I feel the aura of gods and divine beasts. I told you, you can't use the Eye of Calamity carelessly. Your position, the enemies you face, and the situation you are in determine the level of the calamity. This time, I'm afraid you've touched the gods." Han Fei,